This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 4 minutes after 10. A very good morning to you. This is a funny one, actually. I'll get stuck into it shortly. Before we do that, though, do you ever have moments where you just sort of almost throw your hands up in the air and go, right, that's it, I'm out? Like a member of the Dragon's Den, I'm out. How do you process this? Two stories in the news today. I think they both made our bulletin, but they're certainly both very prominent in the news this morning. One is that the Defence Secretary, John Healey, has accused Russia of having a hidden hand in Iranian strikes across the Gulf. This after British troops came under attack for the third time since the conflict began. So you have the Secretary of State for Defence in the United Kingdom accusing Russia of being complicit in attacks across the Gulf, including attacks upon British and, of course, American soldiers, American personnel. And in the same news bulletin, in the same breath, in the same news cycle, in the same paragraph of current affairs, you have Donald Trump relaxing sanctions on Russia in order to try to keep the price of oil down that is rocketing entirely and exclusively because of his actions in the Middle East. So if you were to paraphrase that, and I want to be absolutely clear about something at this point, I don't understand this bit, but I also do. So I understand why they are relaxing sanctions on Russia, because they are prioritising the price of oil over continuing to penalise Vladimir Putin over the illegal invasion of Ukraine. But I also don't understand how I can be able to say, without any fear of inaccuracy or exaggeration, the sentence that I am about to say. Vladimir Putin is helping Iran attack Americans, and Donald Trump is helping Vladimir Putin. I can't drop Americans to America, can we? So Vladimir Putin stands accused of helping Iran attack the United States, and let's try again. Vladimir Putin stands accused by the British Secretary of State for Defence of helping Iran attack Donald Trump's United States, while Donald Trump's United States is relaxing sanctions against Russia to help Vladimir Putin. Look, by design or by accident, it doesn't matter. This is great news for Vladimir Putin, who is on the opposing side in a war that the United States just started. I need a guest. This never happens, really. It's not a phone-in, is it? I need a guest. We should have a button in the studio for when we turn into every other radio programme under the sun and actually book a guest to come on, rather than rely upon the best callers in the business to explain everything to us. Or, of course, to deploy our own brains. I need a guest. Is that as bonkers as it sounds, or is there room for a little bit more a calmness? We could be a little bit more sanguine about it. Vladimir Putin is helping Iran attack America, and America is helping Vladimir Putin sell oil. I'm going home. That's it. What do you do now? If you're supposed to do this for a living, you try to make sense of this madness. No wonder some of the people that were cheering for war 10 minutes ago are now desperate not to mention it at all. I will. I'll play a game. On what page of today's Daily Mail do you think the war in Iran, that they are not only massively supportive of, but also adamant that Keir Starmer was a traitor and a fool not to join? Remember, their columnists oscillated between being embarrassed to contact their American friends to being more ashamed to be British than at any other point in my life. Guess what page today you have to reach in the Daily Mail before they even mention the war? Should we do a multiple choice, Keith? Is it page 1? Is it page 5? Or is it page 10 that you have to turn to in the Daily Mail, the king among the warmongers in this country, full of columnists who are absolutely adamant that Keir Starmer was a disgrace not to join in Donald Trump's war? How many pages do they fill today before they actually even mention the fact or turn attention to the fact that the war continues? Is it on page 1, is it on page 5, or is it on page 10? And continuing my increasingly unfashionable obsession with British newspapers, I spend a lot of time criticising the Daily Telegraph, partly for personal reasons. It's my late father's old paper. And partly because they have gone absolutely stark staring mad on their comment pages. Some of the stuff that they publish under unhinged headlines is beyond parody now, as we demonstrated yesterday. But they have an extraordinarily comprehensive, informative and detailed account of the latest developments across the first 3, 4 or 5 pages of their newspaper today. So credit where credit is due. From the first headline about Russia being behind the attack on UK troops, even as Donald Trump, who was insulting our Prime Minister last week, essentially writes cheques for Vladimir Putin, right through to the latest events in the Middle East. They have covered themselves in glory. They also resist the temptation, which all of the Boris Johnson fan club is doing today, of pretending that the Peter Mandelson scandal has somehow portrayed Keir Starmer as a liar. It may do, never say never, but for James Cleverly or Kemi Badenoch, who have still not removed their noses from between the buttocks of Boris Johnson, and of course a long line of client journalists who sat here chuckling and cheering as Boris Johnson rode roughshod over everything from parliamentary procedure to ministerial standards to basic honesty and truth, lied again and got busted for it again and again and again and again. For these people now to pretend that they care about the possibility of a Prime Minister being economical with the actuality is objectively hilarious, even if their heads are too far up Boris Johnson's backsides for them to appreciate it themselves. So you would, wouldn't you? If you'd been calling for war last week and if you'd been cheering Boris Johnson's myriad lies to the rafters for the last few years, you too would be desperate to talk about anything except the things that you were desperate to talk about last week. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Another journalist I'd like to give some credit to is a friend of mine. You may know him. He's called Ian Dunt. Does some brilliant podcasts, and he writes a Substack that I subscribe to. I pay for this Substack. It's called Striking 13, which I presume is a reference to the first line of 1984. But it is available for free as well. He's an old lefty in many ways, so you can access it for free if you can't afford it. But if you can afford a few quid, then you can chuck it towards Ian. And he's written a piece today that's really focused my mind. It's really focused my mind. I should keep a little list of all the Substacks I subscribe to, just in case you're remotely interested. Let's do that before the end of the programme. Somebody remind me, because I started today's show with absolutely nothing written down. I like to boast to you occasionally about starting the day with 3 words. We'll build an entire 3-hour radio show around 3 little words. Today I've written nothing down before I came into the studio. I've started doodling since I sat down, and all I've written so far is the pages of the daily. I didn't even know what I'd written down there. I've written down 3 numbers, 1, 5 and 10. On what page of the Super Soaraway Daily Mail, your favourite warmongering organ, on what page did they finally turn their attention to the existence of a war that last week they were desperate not only to join, but to use to attack Keir Starmer? Page 1, page 5 or page 10. That's all I've got written down. So I should make a little note about the Substacks as well. But Dunt makes a powerful point today. Let me read it to you, actually. First of all, he explains why he's turning his attention to the markets. Last week I wrote about the political and media response to the war in Iran. This week I'm going to write about the market reaction. In both cases we are witnessing the same process. The refusal of people to accept that the world is run by a madman. Any early responses to that? Because we've sat here now for the best part of a fortnight trying to unravel events, trying to make sense of scenarios. What if Ian's right and we are all wasting our time? Because it is like the proverbial pigeon playing chess, who just struts all over the board, pooping and knocking pieces over before claiming victory and doing a lap of honour while everybody else sits there playing rook 4 to knight 2. What if he's right? This is theory number 1. Of why there is currently a war in Iran. Because this sentence here is haunting me this morning. It contains a word, which is, if you're not familiar with Ian Dunt's work, characteristic of his vocabulary, and it's a word that Ofcom doesn't allow me to say on the radio, but you can improvise or work out for yourself. But the truth is, there is no strategy to what the White House does. There is no calculation. There is no sense of logic or application. It is a chuffing madhouse. I got close to this at the beginning of last week when I said, is there any point trying to work things out when you are dealing with somebody so obviously bonkers? But I don't know that you can ever stop, can you? And what do you do if you take this analysis to its logical conclusion? You probably start talking about lollipop ladies. Of course, you will also start talking about lollipop ladies if you're too ashamed and embarrassed to admit how badly wrong you've called everything since not only Donald Trump decided to run for presidential office, but also started another war, this time in Iran. But for the rest of us who acknowledge facts and reality and our own mistakes, for the rest of us, what do you do if this analysis is correct? I don't know that I am ready to accept it. But it goes down on my list. The first word I have written down today is dunt. And that is the first theory of why this war is happening. I have a current favourite, and I am going to throw open the phone lines shortly and invite you either to add to the list, to vote for things on the list, or to insist that things should be removed from the list because they're so obviously wrong. I honestly think, am I going to go there? Yeah, I am going to go there. I think the biggest reason, there's not going to be an only reason, so under Dunt's analysis, there are no reasons. It is just a pigeon parading across a chessboard. I don't buy that. Somewhere inside Donald Trump's brain, if you could somehow get a microscope and a computer and find a rationale for what he has done, there will be a reason. It won't just be a sort of belch of activity. Why on earth have you done this? If you could drill right down, pump him full of truth serum and drill right down into what passes for his brain, there must be something there, mustn't there? Why have you done this? The answer can't be because I'm completely mad. Because I am absolutely hat stand. So Dunt's theory of the hat stand is number one. Mine, and I am far from alone in this position, and I'm embarrassed, frankly, to have arrived at it now so completely, given that I was a little bit sniffy and perhaps even, perish the thought, a little bit condescending about people who've been saying this from the start. I think it's Epstein. If you use Occam's razor and you dismiss the possibility that he is just mad and it's like a sort of weird spasm that makes no sense at all and has no intellectual basis. He's just started a war. War! If you remove that from the table, and you might not want me to, what are you left with? Why has he done it? So, theory number two, Epstein. Don't look over here, look over there. You know, it's brought down the US ambassador, the British ambassador to the USA. It's seen a member of the royal family literally removed from the royal family. It's seen various bankers and diplomats and foreign politicians see their careers end in ignominy. It's even seen characters like Bill Gates move from borderline sainthood to sultans of sleaze status. Just a little shout out there for the Dire Straits fans. What other reason is there, if not to distract from the fact that he is all over the Epstein files and accused within them of truly hideous and unthinkable crimes, with, of course, the constant caveat that he denies all wrongdoing, as does Andrew Windsor, and that just because these allegations are made in the files does not mean they're true. So you've got Dunt's theory of the hat stand. Stop trying to analyse it all. He's just mad. Then you've got the Epstein distraction, the dead cat. The hat stand, the dead cat. Then you've got the puppet. You've got the Marco Rubio explanation that Benjamin Netanyahu was getting ready to attack Iran, whether America joined in or not, and America decided that they had to join in because they had to retaliate against the retaliation that they were not able to stop because Netanyahu has gone completely rogue. So Netanyahu's puppet is theory number three. We've got the hat stand, the dead cat, and the puppet. Anything else to put on the list? Any other reason? So what I want to do today, as you've probably calculated or worked out already, is decide which one you believe the most. Which of these reasons for this war, that is now 2 weeks old, you think is most compelling and most convincing? Is it simply the fact that Donald Trump is mad and this is his latest spasm, stroke, belch, stroke, brain flatulence? Is it that he is so desperate to move attention away from the Epstein files that he has launched a war in the Middle East? Is it that Benjamin Netanyahu was going to do it anyway for reasons similar to why he's conducted a genocide in Gaza, and the American administration felt it had to be involved, not least because retaliation from Iran would involve the targeting of American assets? Is it because his popularity among his own voters, let alone the rest of the electorate, is at an all-time low, and the economy is, or the cost of living is soaring? So is it because he hasn't really delivered on any of the things he promised to deliver on, except the deportations? So even the racists, it would appear, have a limit of how much they will ignore in return for having their dreams met regarding the racism. So is it just because of the looming midterms that it's a desperate roll of the dice in terms of his political fortunes? That's 4. What else have we got on the list? I mean, would we go as far as to suggest that he's done it? No, I don't think we put Vladimir Putin on this list. He's on all the other lists. The only thing you can say with any certainty about Donald Trump is that he will never do anything that really upsets Vladimir Putin. You can say the same about Nigel Farage, actually. Make of that what you will. He'll never do anything that really upsets Vladimir Putin. Farage yesterday was trying to argue that Vladimir Putin, who is a war criminal, has invaded foreign countries and possesses nuclear weapons, is a bigger threat to the West than Iran, that doesn't have nuclear weapons and hasn't invaded any other sovereign countries. Funny that, isn't it? So I don't think Vladimir Putin told him to. Fits on this list, but it's your list. It's not my list, it's our list. So if you want to put that on the list, give me a ring and tell me why on 0345 6060 973. The hat stand, the dead cat, the puppet, and the popularity. 4 theories. Are there any others? Have we got another one? Can you think of any other theories? Is there anything that we've missed? Regime change. Yep, that's right. That was on the list, and then it wasn't on the list. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be on our list, just because they said it was about regime change, and then they said it wasn't. And the man whose regime they sought to change has currently been replaced by his own son. So do you think it really was regime change? They just somehow changed their mind halfway through the war? Human rights abuses. How does that work? Well, they're killing people in Iran, so we're going to go and kill people in Iran. Okay, it doesn't sound immediately logical, but it might be the reason. They genuinely care. Donald Trump, because remember, it's the machinations of what passes for his mind that we're trying to unravel here. Donald Trump cares passionately about the plight of Iranian civilians. Theory number 6. And he honestly thought he'd be able to help them. I can't keep a straight face saying that, but I can write it down on my list. Sorry, our list. So we're up to 6 now. Any more? Any more for any more? We've got the theory of the hat stand. We've got the dead cat. We've got the puppet. We've got the popularity. We've got regime change. We've got human rights abuses, stroke, concern for the Iranian populace. That's 6. There's room for more, or there's room for you to tell me which one of those you most subscribe to. And remember, on this programme, crucially, why. 7 is going to be money. Stroke oil, stroke profits. They sometimes say the quiet part out loud, and Trump did yesterday reveal that we are going to make a lot of money out of this war. But I've got a sneaking suspicion that he doesn't mean you, he doesn't mean me, and he doesn't mean the average American. Some people are going to make a hell of a lot of money out of this war, and they will all be very, very close to, or possibly related, if not biologically, then by marriage, to Donald Trump. So, 2 weeks in, dust not settling, warmongers falling strangely silent, people who predicted exactly what would happen, not feeling remotely smug because the stakes are so hideously high. 2 weeks in, why did he do it? Why did he do it? 0345 6060 973. I mean it. I need to know which one you back, because right now I'm 52% Epstein, 48% something else.
James O'Brien on LBC.
4 minutes after 10 is the time. Simon in Bournemouth and Keith both adding the same possibility to the list, which takes the number up to 8. I mean, we could conceivably have 10 reasons, 10 options. And, of course, 2 things can be true at the same time. 3 things can be true at the same time. 10 things can be true at the same time. So and we may end up thinking all of these reasons, or many of these reasons, are a little bit true. But Simon in Bournemouth puts it well, and Keith whispered into my ear during the break that it is perfectly possible that it's all about cancelling the midterms. One of the reasons why Volodymyr Zelensky hasn't gone to the polls in Ukraine, well, the main reason why he hasn't gone to the polls as scheduled in Ukraine is because he's at war with Russia, having been illegally invaded by Donald Trump and Nigel Farage's favourite foreign politician. But Donald Trump turns to the American people, and remember, the truth doesn't matter, and says, we can't have midterms because we're at war. It's not impossible, is it? And it is option number 8 on this list. Brian's in Derry. Brian, which one are you going to go for?
Good morning, James.
Hello, Brian.
Midterm.
What, the midterms to improve his chances in them or to cancel them?
Well, if they go ahead,
yes.
the possibility of Donald Trump being impeached,
yes, increases,
and this is all done, which I find sickening and revolting. This is all done. This war to kill thousands of people is all done to protect Donald Trump's own skin.
So he thinks that his popularity will increase as the war continues? Or when he announces, as we said last week, he definitely will, a glorious victory, despite the fact that there hasn't been one, enough of his base will be fooled into thinking he's some sort of strategic and military genius, and his poll ratings and therefore his results in the midterms will go up.
Well, he'll probably venerate himself with a lot of medals. This whole thing reminds me of the old Hans Christian Andersen. I think it was a fairy tale. The Emperor's New Clothes.
Yeah, everything about him is the Emperor's New Clothes. Has been for years, hasn't it?
Yeah, and one other point, James, just before I go.
Yeah.
Can anybody think back to 2-3 weeks ago what both sides or all the interested parties on this current conflict, what were they doing?
What do you mean?
Well, they were talking, negotiating.
Oh, of course, yes, and I mean, according to I think it was the Qataris who were hosting the negotiations, they were actually going rather well. And then, lo and behold, we woke up the next morning and Netanyahu and Trump had started a war. What does that tell us? That they didn't want a negotiation?
Well, what do you think, whenever this...
Stop asking me questions, that's my job. Just give me the answers.
Right. Okay. Well, what they'll be doing at the end of all this conflict will be...
is negotiations.
Negotiations. So we're back where we started.
But with Iran having had the Ayatollah removed, probably replaced by his son, and as you pointed out, civilian casualties and deaths, and of course some American soldiers coming home in body bags, and people being injured and killed in other Gulf states as well, although thankfully at the moment on relatively small scales. Long may that continue. So we've got the popularity. It was option 4. Brian's gone for. Trump thinks this will enhance his popularity, which is currently pitifully low. 28 minutes after 10. If you're just joining us, we've got 8 reasons for this war now, and it's a very different question from when we first asked it, because now we've watched the war. We've got the theory of the hat stand. Ian Dunt, a brilliant journalist, simply saying he's too mad to analyse. Don't bother even trying. He's bonkers. That's all you can say. It's all you can do, and the world is not capable of processing that fact, so we have to continue talking about it as if he isn't. You've got the dead cat theory, the Epstein files, the desperation to avoid the attention that is now rightly being paid to the chronicles of the hideous paedophile and former best friend of Donald Trump. You've got the Israeli angle, the fact that Netanyahu, according to Marco Rubio, was going to go ahead with this attack on Iran anyway, having spent decades lying about Iran's weapons capabilities, and Donald Trump or the American administration felt that they had to join in. You've got regime change. One of the original claims they made and then unmade and then made again and then unmade again. So I don't know. Maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't. Put it on the list. That's number 5, popularity at 4. You've got the claim that it was motivated by a moral concern about the human rights abuses being visited upon the people of Iran. And just the people to lead that kind of mission would be someone who's committed a genocide in Gaza and somebody whose regime is shooting his own citizens in the face in Minneapolis. Money or oil, just cash. There's always cash. Follow the money. Seems tempting, but I think possibly a little bit glib on this occasion. Or he will use it as an opportunity or a springboard from which to cancel the midterms entirely, because he knows he's going to lose them, and he knows that the war isn't going to create a boost in popularity that would deliver a different result. Those are your votes. Those are your options. What are your votes? Here's Dominic Ellis with the headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
32 minutes after 10 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I should probably reveal on what page the newspaper that was probably banging the drum for war most loudly and deploying columnists to write about how terrible it was that Keir Starmer hadn't got involved, how ashamed Richard Littlejohn, Dick by name Littlejohn, was not to so ashamed to be British because Keir Starmer didn't join the war. Andrew Neil writing about how he couldn't tell his American friends other than that we had as a country completely lost our marbles. Yesterday he was writing about how I can't believe Donald Trump started this war without having a plan for what would happen in the Strait of Hormuz. 8 days previously, he was writing about how he couldn't really argue with his American friends. Yeah, they go to a different school. When they complained that Britain seemed to have lost its marbles. So the Daily Mail absolutely four square behind Donald Trump, behind Donald Trump's war, against Keir Starmer's decision not to join it. On what page do they turn their attention to the war this morning, just 2 weeks into hostilities? Let's start on page 1. This is Kemi PM has told lie after lie after lie. They have to put that in quotes, of course, because he hasn't. So the Prime Minister has been accused of lying. It's a very powerful headline until you read into who has accused him of lying, and it's Kemi Badenoch. And this morning, James Cleverly joined in, 2 people who had their noses inserted so tightly into Boris Johnson's buttocks that they lost the ability to smell. Which is probably just as well given where their noses were. But if a Prime Minister lies and you excuse him and you champion him and you cheer for him and you chuckle at him and he gets busted for lying and he gets hounded out of Parliament for lying by his own party, you need to rely on some pretty bent client journalists to claim that suddenly you care passionately about a Prime Minister who hasn't been found to have lied. So that's page 1 of the Daily Mail, and something about Kate Middleton not drinking alcohol. Oh no, that's the whole of page 3. Sorry, and you know, good for her. She has, of course, struggled with cancer, and it is on page 3 of the Daily Mail that she's cut back on alcohol since recovering from cancer. Page 4, something about prostate cancer. I hope you'll be deported, is a headline. You don't really have to read it. I think that Daily Mail would apply that to pretty much everybody, Brown. Bully. There's a chef on page 5 who has resigned after being accused of bullying, and a story about chocolate on a 3D print. There's a war in the Middle East, everybody. There's a war in the Middle East. People are dying. 4 American soldiers coming back this morning in body bags, as you just heard in the news bulletin. The Daily Mail wanted this war. They really, really wanted Keir Starmer to be in this war. Ted Verity, the editor of the Daily Mail, absolutely adamant that Keir Starmer was a disgrace for not joining this war. Their columnist, Andrew Neil and Richard Littlejohn and others, felt ashamed to be British, disgusted that Keir Starmer hadn't got stuck in. So we're on to page 6 now. And, it's back to Peter Mandelson. The co-hosts of Peter Mandelson's drinks reception on the night of the White House Correspondents' Dinner last year, the Daily Mail, I'll say that again because you still might not believe it to be true, and also there'll be an awful lot of people taking their lead this morning from the Daily Mail, not mentioning that they were the co-hosts of Peter Mandelson's ambassadorial drinks reception at last year's White House Correspondents' Dinner. The co-hosts of that drinks reception return to the Peter Mandelson story on page 6 of today's newspaper, and indeed on page 7, with the sort of crown prince of reverse ferrets, another columnist called Dan Hodges. Come on, it's got to be on page 8, has it? No, back to Blair somehow and Epstein. It's page 8 of the Daily Mail, the biggest warmongers in the country just a few short days ago, and we're up to page 8 and they haven't mentioned the war. They seem to be channeling Basil Fawlty on a scale the likes of which we have not seen since Fawlty Towers was on the television. So Tony Blair told Jeffrey Epstein he consulted with a religious man for personal advice during a meeting at Downing Street is also a bigger story than the continuing war in Iran. And then some photographs of some ladies at Cheltenham races yesterday. That's also more important than the war in Iran. And a story that's not true, claiming that schools have been told not to ask children to draw Jesus in case Muslims are offended. I mean, to the credit of whoever wrote this bilge, they do actually include the final paragraph, which says it's advisory and does not ban pupils from drawing any religious figures. So, hallelujah, page 10. Oh, ashamed to be British, can't look my American friends in the eyes. Page 10 of the Daily Mail, before they even acknowledge that the war they were so desperate for Keir Starmer to join just last week is actually going on and going very badly. Because on page 11, they deploy the director of the Crisis Research Institute in Oxford to write under the headline, "The bizarre failure to plan for a blockade means epic fury is heading for," you guessed it, epic fail. A headline that we applied to this story at the beginning of this week. It's taken the Daily Mail a week to catch up, but better late than never, lads. Better late than never. So, the war that Keir Starmer's refusal to join made Richard Littlejohn feel more ashamed to be British than he's ever felt before in his life. The war that Keir Starmer's refusal to join made Andrew Neil embarrassed to converse with all of his American friends. They go to a different school. Has now reached a point where the pages of the newspaper that pays them for their ridiculous opinions is now paying a man to write about the scale of the failure that was visible from space if you were either vaguely honest or possessed of 11 functioning brain cells. The bizarre failure to plan for a blockade means epic fury is heading for epic fail. And the editor of the Daily Mail, Ted Verity, considers the weather, blowing off some hats at the Cheltenham races, the continuing Peter Mandelson story, and a chef being forced to resign over allegations of bullying. And the Princess of Wales not drinking as much alcohol as she used to are all much more important stories than the war that they were desperate for the British Prime Minister to join. It is as if Basil Fawlty invaded the editorial conference yesterday and shouted, "Don't mention the war!" It's 10:39. Al's in Glasgow. Al, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. Actually, you started off by one thing, which is saying that you wanted a guest, and I'm going to nominate Malcolm Nance.
Okay. On the relationship between the sanctions being lifted on Russia and the accusation that Russia is helping Iran.
Well, he is a U.S. intelligence officer. He fought in Desert Storm and Ukraine.
Yeah, but I should have been clearer. I need a guest on that specific issue that I'm currently confused by. So, I mean, I'll definitely put him on the list of someone we should be talking to, but I need someone who can unravel that for me. And really, to be honest, Al, I want to be reassured that it's not quite as bonkers as it looks and that there is a kind of pragmatic rationale for easing sanctions on the war criminal, even as he helps the Iranian regime attack British and American positions. But that's not why you rang in. Tell me why you did.
No. Well, as far as the war is concerned, it's not about regime change or nuclear disarmament or any of the normal sort of reasons. And I think a few people have mentioned the midterms. That's not the main reason either, I don't think. Although I do think that his stated rationale would be to postpone them rather than cancel them.
Yeah.
And he would only need to he could announce that in August. I think what he needs to do is keep the war going until August, and then he could say, right, I'm postponing the midterms for a year.
I think that's true. I don't know that he will, but I think it is true that he could. But that's not the reason that you're going for either. I mean, you don't have to run through all 7 that you've rejected before you arrive at the one that you're endorsing, because there's quite a long queue behind you, Al.
No, fair enough. Right, so the 2 main ones are money, but the top one is distraction.
So that's Epstein?
Yes, yes, from Trump's point of view, but also from Putin's point of view, and I think he is a player in this, and it's a distraction from Ukraine.
Yeah.
So from Trump's point of view, you look at who else is involved, who else is Trump close to. Putin, obviously, but the other 2 are Kushner and Witkoff.
Mm-hmm.
Kushner is interesting because he never appears in news. He's always this sort of
eminence grise, background figure, man in a suit.
Yes, but he's also the son of a jailed felon associated with Trump.
He certainly is, and very close friends with 3 brothers who got sent down yesterday for sex trafficking and hideous rape crimes. I think they were the estate agents that helped the Kushners buy an apartment in New York as well. But these are associations that don't necessarily damn a man. We've all been friends with people who have turned out not to be squeaky clean in the well, I think we have. I just want to push you towards the possibility that you're overthinking it, and that actually this is quite a complicated and sophisticated plan that you're describing, and Donald Trump is an idiot.
Yeah, well, I mean, I only mention them because they're all of his negotiations are financially related. But I think the top one is about Putin and distraction from Ukraine.
Wow. OK, I'll put that on the list. That goes in at 9. I don't know that I agree, but who cares, frankly, because all of these are viable suggestions. That's what happens when you have a vacuum. And, of course, the enduring shame of the people that attack Keir Starmer for not joining this war is that the vacuum was visible from the very start. I don't care whether you're Kemi Badenoch or James Cleverly or Richard Littlejohn or Ted Verity, the editor of the Daily Mail, or Nigel Farage. The vacuum where the rationale for war should have been was clear from day one, from minute one. And luckily, we can prove that we pointed that out at the time by the identity of the people that we kept quoting. Do you remember? It's only 2 weeks ago, General David Petraeus. Tell me how this ends. General Colin Powell. You need to have a clear political objective before you start a war. And the other piece of the jigsaw, the laminated piece of the jigsaw, the Chilcot checklist, the 10 things that a British Prime Minister must do, having learned the lessons of the Chilcot inquiry and the lessons of the Iraq War before joining another war. And Keir Starmer has abided by that list like a duck abides to water. But of course, such is the nature of the client media in this country, and the appalling Tory bias and the hideous dishonesty and moral corruption of organs like the Daily Mail, that they are now just pretending that they never called for it in the first place. Not wasting any energy as we are this morning trying to work out why it's still happening. Jake's in Wimbledon. Jake, what do you reckon?
Hello.
Hello.
I think he's bored. I just think he gets bored.
That's number 10 then.
It's very simple,
Yeah.
and I think if you mix into that the brew of his dementia, which was probably there in the first term he was in, you mix it together. He just things keep coming up on his desk, like the Epstein.
Got to
thing,
do something. I've just got to do something. He's like a child with a very short attention span. I mean, boredom, oddly, probably comes closest. It's probably the biggest umbrella, Jake. I think under the umbrella of boredom, you can probably fit more of the other 9 reasons on my list than any other umbrella.
Yeah, and you should be very scared of boredom, because I think history tells you, if you sort of look at, I'm always careful about sort of comparing someone to Hitler, but you kind of think people make impetuous decisions in power. I think literally because they're bored. And they just want to throw the things up in the air and see how they land, And
that fits probably closest to the theory of the hat stand, Ian Dunt's theory that he's just mad and the world cannot process the fact that somebody so powerful is just mad. And a madman who is bored does mad things. Yeah.
I don't think he gives a dingo's kidneys about anything, really.
Is that a figure of speech that you've just invented, or is that one that's in common parlance already? Because I love it.
I was trying to think of some. I wanted to say a ruder word.
A dingo's kidneys?
I think it's a Douglas Adams one, isn't it?
Oh, of course it is. There's so many. You show me a felicitous phrasing that I'm not familiar with, and it's almost certainly going to have its roots in the genius that was, sadly, Douglas Adams. Jake, beautiful stuff. All right, we'll put that on the list. We're not really canvassing votes at the moment. The last 2 callers have added things to my already 8-strong list, but you can carry on. We might continue this conversation for a little longer than the first hour. I might even run through the Chilcot checklist at some point, and I do want to talk to somebody who can just hopefully, because you think about being patriotic and wanting the best for your country, is that even if you rightly despise somebody like Donald Trump, you still don't want everything he does to be disastrous, just to prove that you were right to despise him in the first place. It's like the opposite position to those who deploy the phrase, what was it again? Trump derangement syndrome, to describe people who've subsequently been proved right about absolutely everything. You don't want to be like them. So I want someone to explain to me why lifting some of the sanctions on Russia, selling oil into the market, is not the hideous moment in the current historical cycle that it appears to be. I want to be persuaded by someone who understands things better than I do that that's not actually a disaster for Ukraine, a disaster for the world, a disaster for everybody. It's 10:47.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:51 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Not for the first time this week, Catch-22 has appeared in my contemplations, this time as a consequence of Pavel in Poland, reminding me of an element of it. I dropped a minor clanger, didn't I, earlier? It was late last week when I mistakenly described it as being set during the Vietnam War. It's a long time since I've read it. It's even longer since I was in it. Have I told you what happened to me with regard to Catch-22 in about 1991? The summer of 91, probably? When the University of London Drama Society took a production of Catch-22 to the Edinburgh Festival, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And we had received permission from Joseph Heller to adapt it into a play, something that was not easily given. And he came... I can never remember. So we did 2 plays that summer. We did Slum Clearance by Václav Havel, who, of course, was a playwright and poet who went on to be the president of the Czech Republic. And we did Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. And I was a young man, and I was not a very serious man, Keith. I was not a very serious man at that stage in my life, and I don't have a huge memory of that summer. I acquitted myself perfectly well. I delivered all my lines in the right order, at the right time, on the right stage, in the right place. But it's fair to say that the theatrical pursuits that summer were not my top priority. I think you can probably work out what was. It's a short list, but it didn't really change until I met my wife, that list. And so those are my abiding memories of that summer. So we did 2 plays, Slum Clearance by Václav Havel and Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, and one of those 2 men came to see the play that we did. And I can't remember which one it was. So either, would he have been the president of the Czech Republic in 1990? I mean, he'd have been very busy either way. But either Václav Havel or Joseph Heller were in Edinburgh anyway for the festival, which is not that surprising, given that they're both brilliant and fated writers. And we received a message that the author was coming to see the play that we were putting on in an old Masonic hall. Masonic. An old Masonic hall just off the Royal Mile, just down from the castle at the top of the Royal Mile in Edinburgh. Do you know, I think I can even remember what it was called, so my memory wasn't completely shot to pieces. It was called the Roman Eagle Lodge. It was a Masonic hall at the top of the Royal Mile, just on the left before you get to the castle. And we put on the Slum Clearance, the play by Václav Havel, a brilliant play, starring David Farrar, who you may have come across recently as a sports commentator at the Winter Olympics, would you believe? Him and I, we were a double act in the Václav Havel play. And Catch-22, an adaptation of Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. And one of them came to see it, and I can't remember which one it was. Actually, I just remembered another story from that summer. You're not going to believe, the guy who played the lead in Catch-22, Yossarian, is the name of the character. I could sit here for a month of Sundays before you would guess what he does now. He let me just give you a clue. He performs regularly to tens of thousands or thousands and thousands and thousands of people. The star of the play that I was in the Edinburgh Festival in either 1990 or 1991, I can't remember which, he now performs regularly to thousands of people. But if I stayed here until next Monday's show started, you would not guess correctly what it is that he does, and I'll probably forget to tell you anyway. So anyway, back to Catch-22. The mess officer turned syndicate founder, of course, Milo Minderbinder, Pavel reminds us from Poland, bombed his own base and troops because it was good for the syndicate. It made money. And this beautiful logic that runs through Catch-22, this warped logic that defines both what Catch-22 is and the entire thrust of the masterpiece that it is, what's good for the syndicate is good for the country. He even convinced the troops to support him and to support the attacks on their own base by sharing the profits from it with them, and he was ultimately exonerated by his superiors. One of those wonderful examples of satire coming perilously close to reality. So I presume Pavel is going with option 7, which is simply, it's all about the Benjamins. They've done it for the money. John's in Newcastle. Why do you think they've done it, John?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Yeah, I think it's because he's a toddler, frankly. I think he's never quite grown up, so I'm leaning towards option 10 in that respect.
But, well, it's option 10 or option 1, isn't it? Is it because, option 1 is bonkers, option 10 is bored. It could be a combination of both, because there's nothing more dangerous than a bored bonkers person.
Yeah, I just don't... I think the first time round he had the adults in the room helping to keep him in check. Now it's all yes men. He hasn't got that.
But that doesn't explain why. So even a toddler, when you ask them why they've done something, they'll say, because I want biscuit or something like that. Do you see what I mean? We haven't got the why of it.
Well, I suppose there's the two sides. For the sanctions, I believe he's lifted those to keep the oil price, try and keep it low, and that's to keep his base happy.
I know that. I mean, in terms of starting the war.
Well, Venezuela went well, so, sometimes toddlers do just throw their toys out the pram and hit other children.
Yeah, you're right, for no reason whatsoever. So it's like a spasm. What's weird so far, and we may continue this conversation, is that the temptation at the beginning of this week, and certainly at the beginning and the end of last week, was to reach for one of the more rational, one of the more mature explanations, one of the more reasonable reasons, and just acknowledge that Trump was an entirely unreasonable and immature man. So the likelihood of him ever delivering on what was a clear intention was low, but the intention was nonetheless clear. That seems to have disappeared. Nobody seems to think that this was genuinely about regime change or genuinely about human rights abuses in Iran. Remember, I could hear calls on LBC. I think Nick took some on the breakfast show from people insisting that you were somehow an enemy of the Iranian people if you weren't in favour of them being attacked by Donald Trump. I've also heard people, I kid you not, claim that if you wanted to explain why this would be disastrous for Iran, then you must somehow be a fan of the Ayatollah. That probably constitutes the thing that if somebody from the left were to say it or to do it, it would be hung around their neck for the rest of their careers. A bit like being a presenter on Press TV, which was, of course, funded by Iranian state TV, and that didn't stop various members of the media and political establishment in this country from hoovering up the petrodollars. 10:58 is the time. Frank's in Carlisle, staying in the north. What would you like to say, Frank?
Hi, James. Nice to talk to you again. Right, I'm going to pick two of the ones you've already mentioned, Puppet and Vanity.
What was the first one?
Puppet.
So the Netanyahu theory that Marco Rubio shared with us and then unshared the very next day.
I think that because he shared it and because it didn't actually make America look good and because of the way he completely just redacted, went back on it.
Trump would have hated it. How dare you tell them that I only did it because Netanyahu was going to do it? I'm Donald Trump. I'm in charge of everything.
Makes me think that was probably true. So, but it's not. It's not just as simple as that. He's going to be 80 in 3 months. He's clearly very ill.
Well, he's not well. I'll give you that. But we're not. Neither of us doctors.
No. But even if he was, in the peak of health, he's still going to be 80 in 3 months. He's going to be thinking about his legacy. And with Trump, it's always money or vanity. So if what he wants is his name to be on things, he puts his name, he looks at the Kennedy Center, he looks at everything, all the old presidents' names. He wants his name on stuff. What can he possibly do now? Imagine if he's considering his mortality, he's going to think, if I go, there's nobody to seal the Epstein files. That's all going to come out. That's what people are going to remember. Yeah. How great would it be if he could solve Iran? Because in simple terms, that's how he's thinking of it. He's thinking, because he doesn't go into the details. He's not a details person. He's a big picture. He wants to solve Iran. And if he can be the president who solved Iran, that's great. Israel will be happy with that because obviously Iran and Israel hate each other. So that's fairly standard. And that's what he's doing. I want to know, though, who's pulling the strings in America? Because I don't think, Benjamin Netanyahu or his people rang up Trump and said, we're going to war. There must be people in America who were pulling Donald Trump's strings because he's very malleable.
So this is appealing to his ego. Idiot. This is appealing to his ego. You can be the guy who... ... And then
somebody's whispering in his ear and saying that. I could add a theory, which is basically the Grand Vizier theory. There's an evil vizier somewhere.
Stephen Miller.
Maybe a lot of them.
Stephen Miller.
Stephen Miller, tech bros. What are we not seeing?
This is where I find this is where I find Ian Dunt a little bit more persuasive because I'm like you. I fall into the trap of thinking there's got to be. I did it during COVID with what's his chops? That weirdo who went to Barnard Castle. What was his name? Dominic Cummings. I just kept thinking, maybe there is some master plan that we're not seeing, and that's what you're doing. Whereas Dunt writes on his brilliant Striking 13 Substack, here it is. We are witnessing the refusal of people to accept that the world is run by a madman. The truth is there is no strategy to what the White House does. There is no calculation. There is no sense of logic or application. It is a flipping madhouse. And then all of these theories fall. I mean, it is literally a waste of time doing what we're doing and positing the existence of a grand vizier or someone pouring poison into his ear or stroking his ego or giving him an opportunity to duck the midterms or improve his popularity or change the regime or avoid the Epstein files or make some money or distract from Ukraine. We could sit here till we're blue in the face when the real answer is it is a chuffing madhouse.
Yeah, that's fair. Russia Oil, he's just pulling levers. He doesn't know how the machine works. He knows that if he... I
think it's worse than that. I'm going to see if Bill Browder's around. He's the man I owe all of my understanding to Vladimir Putin to, and I'd be fascinated to know what his reaction is to the idea that the British Defence Secretary is accusing Vladimir Putin of helping Iran, and Donald Trump woke up this morning and yesterday morning and decided the best thing he could do in these circumstances was help Vladimir Putin. Thank you, Frank. Is it a coincidence that on the same day it was reported that Nigel Farage had come out and said that the Iranian regime, which has not invaded any other countries and doesn't have any nuclear weapons, was more dangerous than Russia, which has invaded other countries illegally and has a shed load of nuclear weapons? Funny that. And remember, there is absolutely no suggestion that, like his very, very close friend and protege and former leader of his party in Wales, there's no suggestion at all that Nigel Farage takes money from Kremlin stooges in order to parrot Kremlin talking points and talk up Vladimir Putin all the time. It is absolutely plausible that Nigel Farage does it entirely for free.
James O'Brien on LBC.
6 minutes after 11 is the time. I want to be absolutely clear that this is a symptom of what we're describing, but the British version. It is perfectly right for our news bulletin to carry comments from James Cleverly about Boris Johnson, and there is not about Keir Starmer, and there is not room in a news bulletin to remind you of what James Cleverly's qualifications are to criticise or critique a Prime Minister for allegedly, but not by any stretch of the imagination, provenly having lied or misled the House of Commons. Luckily, I've got the time and the space to do that, so I will remind you now that James Cleverly is the bloke who endorsed Boris Johnson's bid to return to 10 Downing Street as Prime Minister after he had resigned in disgrace, prior to the findings of a committee made up, I think, of a plurality of Conservative members, that he was a barefaced serial liar. So James Cleverly, in what we're talking about October now, are we, of 2022, was Foreign Secretary for 10 minutes. After Liz Truss resigned, James Cleverly was one of the biggest voices to call for Boris Johnson to return as Prime Minister. I'm going to quote you what he said at the time, because the man has the sheer effrontery to be touring the studios this morning, and I hope he got challenged in some studios, because he certainly didn't get challenged in this one, claiming that he can sit in judgment upon the probity or the integrity of Keir Starmer, having said just 4 short years ago, and I kid you not, you'll think this has come out of private eye, but it's real, "I know Boris has learned lessons from his time in Number 10 and will ensure the focus is on the needs of the country from day one." Let me remind you of the myriad things that Boris Johnson lied about. The reason why he finally lost the confidence of his own party was because he appointed a man accused of groping. He appointed a man accused of grabbing people by their intimate parts to a job as a whip in his party, and it then emerged he knew that the bloke had been accused of grabbing people by their intimate parts. That was the relatively small straw that broke the camel's back, because people realised he was not capable of not lying. But the favourite lies, the ones that really did for him, were when he stood up in the House of Commons and said there hadn't been any parties at Downing Street during the COVID lockdowns. And then he stood up in the House of Commons and said there hadn't been, well, actually, I'm sorry, there had been parties in Downing Street during the COVID lockdowns, but I didn't know anything about them. And then he stood up in the House of Commons and said, well, actually, there were parties in Downing Street during the COVID lockdowns, and I did know about them, but I definitely didn't go to any of them. And then he stood up in the House of Commons and said, well, there were parties in Downing Street during the COVID lockdowns, and I did know about them, and I did go to them. And that is the catalogue of calumny, the absolute avalanche of dishonesty that hold Boris Johnson below the waterline so completely that when it turned out he'd also been lying about promoting a sex pest, an alleged sex pest, to a senior government position, they decided that they'd had enough of him. If you are an idiot, a terminally online avatar or a client journalist so far up the backside of the Conservative Party that you have forgotten what day it is and can't tell whether it's day or night. At this point you say, oh, Boris Johnson had to go because he ate some cake. You hold your readers, your viewers, your listeners in such obvious and complete contempt that you think they're too thick to remember what actually happened. Boris Johnson had to eat some cake. He had to go because he ate some cake. James cleverly turns up in the studios this morning accusing Keir Starmer with no basis or evidence yet. The evidence may emerge of being a liar, but he was perfectly happy for Boris Johnson, a proven liar, hounded out of office, resigned in disgrace, didn't even have the guts to face the music. He ran off before the music even started playing. But back in 2022, James cleverly thought that Boris Johnson should return as Prime Minister because, and I quote, he has learned lessons from his time in Number 10. This is a bloke. They're calling today for the Prime Minister's ethics advisor to look again at the Mandelson story. 2 ethics advisors resigned in disgust at Boris Johnson's contempt for ethics. But James cleverly thought he should have another go as Prime Minister in 2022. There are days when I think I'm the only person who bothers to remember this stuff. Oh, who should we get to talk about what a bad egg Keir Starmer is? Who are the Tories offering up today to talk about what a bad egg Keir Starmer is? Oh, we could have James Cleverly on. What, James... The one who wanted Boris Johnson to come back and have another go as Prime Minister in 2022 after he'd been busted for lying on a nuclear scale, after 2 ethics advisors had resigned in disgust at his absolute contempt for ethics. What on earth is James Cleverly going to come on my programme and say? He's going to say that the ethics advisors should get involved. Oh, but oh, all right, just book him, bring him on, but don't mention the fact that I used to pretend not to think that ethics advisors mattered because it was the only way I could sustain my support for Boris Johnson after he'd been revealed to be all of the things that his critics repeatedly explained. And there is the parallel with Donald Trump. He is all of the things that his critics have repeatedly explained. But if you've got your head up Boris Johnson's backside, you are almost certainly somebody who has deployed the phrase Trump derangement syndrome to describe those in your own industry who've been proved right about everything. Which brings us to the thing that we will never be proved right about. The choice this morning of reasons why Donald Trump went to war in Iran. And we're nowhere near a consensus. You have Ian Dunt's theory of the hat stand. More on that in a moment. You have the basic business of distraction. Option 1, distracting from the Jeffrey Epstein files. Option 2, distracting from the situation in Ukraine, which is a little bit more sophisticated as a theory, but nonetheless credible. Option number 3 is that Marco Rubio was right when he simply said we had to do it because Netanyahu was going to do it and we knew that Iran would respond and we wanted to respond to Iran's response to Netanyahu before they responded to us. And then, of course, the very next day he denied that he'd said that. Unfortunately for him, it was on tape. But we live in a world where that no longer matters. Any more than it matters that Boris Johnson left Downing Street in disgrace. James cleverly wanted to come back and have another go and thinks that today he's somehow qualified to critique Keir Starmer. It is because of the looming midterms and his tanking popularity levels that Donald Trump went to war in Iran because he thought somehow that it would improve his standing. It can be over very easy and be a great success, which he'll claim anyway, even as it continues to be an epic failure. He'd claim a big success and his voters would be so stupid they'd go along with it. Number 5, regime change, which held true until roughly the moment that they replaced the last Ayatollah with the new one, his son. Human rights abuses, concern for the Iranian people. That's the one, isn't it? That's the one that makes you go, really? A couple of times this week, Eleanor and I have looked at each other and gone, what the hell is wrong with these people? Including people that we have the great pleasure and privilege of working alongside. What the hell is wrong with these people? And I think of all the things that would demonstrate just how utterly bent they are intellectually and morally, it would have to be the claim that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are going to bomb Iran because they care about the Iranian people. I mean, we're only going back a week and a half to hear that coming out of these speakers through this microphone. Oh, yes, they care deeply about the Iranian people. You don't have to worry about international law because the Iranians have broken international law. The human rights abuses visited upon the Iranian people provide the perfect moral justification for us to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. And they actually said these things out loud, give or take a few verbs and nouns. And now the polar opposite is true, which is why the Daily Mail can't bring itself to mention the bloody thing until page 10 of today's newspaper. You've got to stay angry. You don't stay angry, everything gets worse. And, of course, if it continues to get worse, then at least by being angry, you stayed honest. But here it is. Everybody looking the other way. Everybody channeling Basil Fawlty. Everybody pretending that 10 minutes ago they weren't calling for the thing that has turned out to be absolutely disastrous, to be joined by Keir Starmer. So that's number 6, the idea that they cared about the Iranian people. If you signed up for that one, then please give me your phone number, because I got a bridge to sell you. Number 7, follow the money. It's all about the Benjamins, the money, the oil, the cash, the moolah. Could be that. Could be that. I mean, there is a theory, and it is entirely a theory, utterly unevidenced, that someone just gave him a ton of money. They had a quick whip around the Middle East, raised $10 billion, stuck it in a secret bank account in Cyprus, and it's going to be the Trump's family fortune for generations to come. Absolutely unevidenced, no support for that idea whatsoever. But the thing about vacuums is that when they're created, anything can move into it. The more perceivable option under It's All About the Benjamins would simply be that people are making a ton of money out of this war, and it's the same people that always do. The arms manufacturers and in this occasion the fossil fuel vampires. Donald Trump actually said yesterday, even if things carry on like this, we are going to make a lot of money. And as I mentioned earlier, when he said we, he did not mean you or me or any of the people that are minded to vote for him. Number 8, he wants to actually call off the midterms using the war as an excuse. Number 9, distract from Ukraine, which is similar to the distracting from the Epstein, but different enough to merit a slot all of its own. And number 10, he is just bored. He is just bored. It could be that. Anthony sent me a message. He says, I can't stay angry. I'm just so tired. And that's something that I want to speak about next. Because Ian Dunt makes a superb point in his superlative Substack this morning. And you can actually hear him reading it as well if you click on the relevant icon. And he talks about why we like conspiracy theories. Okay? Now, don't at me to tell me that you don't like conspiracy theories. You understand the seductive nature of a conspiracy theory. The one thing we discover when we talk to conspiracy theorists, whether it's about vaccines, whether it's about wars, or whether it's about lizards running the country, is that they allow people to pretend that the world is not as chaotic as it actually is. Life, as I think Thomas Hobbes said, is nasty, brutish, and short. The human existence is nasty, brutish, and short. I don't agree with him about that, but it is a way of highlighting the chaotic nature of our existence. So a conspiracy theory, the world is secretly run by lizards. The world is secretly run by Jews. I mean, the most hideous anti-Semitic conspiracy theory of them all. They appeal to people, sometimes even people possessed of some intelligence, because they are a preferable alternative to the obvious chaos that underpins humanity, right? And that is why you sign up for a narrative that an evil cabal is responsible for all the bad things that happen. The simplification helps people like Anthony. I can't stay angry anymore, but my nerves are jangling. So I need to understand what's going on. And the answer is, well, the world is run by a secretive cabal. The royal family are actually lizards. The Jews are pulling the strings of the entire world. These are the oldest conspiracy theories of all, and in the case of the final one, the most anti-Semitic. And you can understand why people are drawn to these, because the alternative is to believe in chaos. And that's what's happening now. This is the point Ian Dunt makes so brilliantly this morning. The people that subscribed to conspiracy theories in the past were either kooky, these are his words, or foolish, and he doesn't make the point about the anti-Semitic conspiracy theory because those words are not adequate to describe people who sign up to that hideous doctrine, but it's people who are afraid of the chaos of the world, who are settling for something that's a bit like a conspiracy theory, but much more prosaic, much more easy to digest. They are signing up to the idea that Donald Trump possesses reason. We've all done it. Even those of us who've been crystal clear about what a hideous character he is. We've all done it. We're projecting reason onto Donald Trump. And he doesn't have any. The White House is, in the words of Ian, an effing madhouse. So what do we do then? I mean, what do we do then? What do we do then? You and I every day. There's a war going on. We can't be the Daily Mail and pretend that there isn't until page 10 of the newspaper, because that would be a disgusting betrayal of our listeners and our consciences. But if Donald Trump is literally insane, if there is absolutely no semblance of conventional reason in any of his thinking, he is driven. Another brilliant writer who I admire enormously is a writer called Edward Docks, D-O-C-X. He hasn't been doing much journalism lately because he's been busy writing episodes of Slow Horses, which gives you an idea of just what a gifted bloke he is. He's a very old pal of mine. And he wrote a piece about Trump, I told you at the time, typifying him as an ogre. The way you understand him as an ogre, he is nothing but a collection of insatiable appetites. Women, money, food, beef burgers, applause, praise, give me more. It's all I can do and sense. And we sit here trying to make sense of an ogre who exists solely to feed his hideous and insatiable appetites. I am Trump. I am hungry. War, money, praise, stick my name on the Kennedy Center, drop some bombs on Iran, dance in front of an adoring crowd, even though I look like a muppet. They'll pretend that I'm Michael Jackson. It's incredible. Give me the Nobel Peace Prize. And if you don't, I'll bomb the Middle East. Give me the FIFA Peace Prize. Remove everybody from the room who will reflect how ridiculous I am, because I am Trump and I am magnificent. I am the naked emperor, of course, as an earlier caller pointed out. But if you could have killed that boy in the crowd shouting that the emperor was naked, he'd still be marching around the place, taking the praise and the plaudits from the people complimenting him on the quality of his schmutter. How do we deal with that if it's true? If Trump is just a collection of insatiable appetites who does not deploy reason in any of his decisions and has started a war because, and that is the end of the sentence. Why has Donald Trump started a war? Because he has. Why are you expecting more, James? Because I have to. I can't not expect more. I can't subscribe to a worldview that portrays the most powerful man in it as a collection of insatiable, insane appetites. Why has he started a war? Because he has. This isn't traditional phone-in territory, is it? What the hell are you going to ring in and tell me now? How do we navigate a world in which Donald Trump is just mad? A collection of insane and insatiable appetites. Ozymandias, as a couple of you have rather intelligently pointed out. So, I suppose, because I do want to hear your thoughts on this, although as you can tell I'm in one of those moods where I'm more than happy to continue sharing mine until about a week next Wednesday. Is this the winner? Is Ian Dunt right? Is the actual answer to the question not anything vaguely intelligent, nuanced or detailed? It's got nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. It's got nothing to do with Benjamin Netanyahu. It's got nothing to do with the looming midterms or the nature of the regime in Iran or the human rights abuses that regime has undertaken or the money that will be made or the oil that will be sold or the midterms that will be cancelled or the war in Ukraine and the will and the desires of Vladimir Putin, or perhaps the final caller got closest, the boredom of Trump. It's more than boredom. An insane, insatiable collection of appetites, and we all sit here trying to analyse it. As if he's lying on a couch and we're sitting here sucking our pen with our notebook in our hand going, oh, tell me about your relationship with your mother. There is none. There's no reason there. It's as if a computer had created a creature consisting entirely of greed and appetite. And what if that's the answer? What if that's the answer? Now, I'm going to ask you to do me a little favour now. Can you help me turn this into a phone-in? Because it isn't, is it? What if that's the answer? What if Trump is just appetite? What if he is just feeling with no fact, sentient but utterly impermeable to reason? He is just a conglomerate of hungers. What do we do then? 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
is 26 minutes after 11. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where happily nobody pretends otherwise now. The idea that this war Donald Trump is waging in Iran would somehow be a good idea has been entirely abandoned. I suppose you should credit Andrew Neil and people like that for having the, is it brass neck or is it actually the decency to admit? Well, they haven't admitted they got it horribly wrong. They've just started writing articles about how wrong it is. His colleague Richard Littlejohn instead has started writing articles about lollipop ladies rather than admit how wrong he was. So I'd rather have the idiot who can at least implicitly acknowledge how wrong they've been. I'd rather have him than the idiot who can't. I just think it's a little bit healthier. But the bigger question of why Trump trumps, that's a horrible one to contemplate, because if it's true that we're wasting our time trying to come up with reasons for him doing anything, then what do we do with our time? How do we navigate this world together if the most powerful man in it is beyond reason, if he is just a madman? David's in Dundee. David, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on. I think your list earlier on, you raised sort of the reasons why Trump may have done this. I think it's probably 2 or 3 things on that list, and I can't remember exactly what they were off the top of my head, but I remember thinking 3 and 4 were likely to be the reasons. But I think you've also got to view it through the prism of the fact that he's not up for re-election. So he is completely off the leash. He doesn't care. Not yet. I
don't think he's given up on the idea of having another go.
No, he probably hasn't. But again, as unlikely as that is, I actually think he's... And I think that also explains the General Maduro thing with Venezuela, the whole carry on with Greenland and Denmark. And I think he's just genuinely not worried about what anyone thinks anymore. He's like, I'm just going to do what I want and nobody can stop me. And I'm just...
But he was restrained during the first term by people around him who at least when they held up mirrors, they reflected reality and truth back to him. Now the people around him hold up.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing as well. He's just surrounding himself with people who are there just to say yes to him and implement whatever it is that he wants to do. I mean, Kristi Noem would still be in charge of her department if she hadn't sort of thrown Trump under the bus with her whole advert thing, So they were literally there just to sort of say yes to Trump. They're not there because of any kind of competence or skill or...
But what do we do then? I mean, what if my friend Ian Dunt is right? And what if my friend Edward Docks is right? And that he is... And what if my friend Lewis Goodall is right, who I think recently described Donald Trump as a wriggling bag of uncontrollable urges? What if they're all right? And this isn't your problem, David. I don't know what you do for a living, but you probably don't do this, do you, what I'm doing? No. What do we do with ourselves if it's absolutely pointless trying to work out what's going on? Because all that you can ever say is that, and Orwell gets close to this, and Joseph Heller gets close to this, the reason there's a war is because there's a war.
Your producer asked me the same question, and I was as unsure then as I am now, unfortunately.
I'm not going to go through this alone.
I think we need to just stand up to... stand up to Trump's maybe the wrong way, but stick by our own morals. If we think what he's doing is wrong, we need to call it out as wrong. And a lot of European countries are doing that better than we are at the moment.
We're doing it pretty well, I think. And I know there's an opportunity to give Starmer a kicking, but if you go through the Chilcot checklist, the 2 decisions he made, one to not join the war, but 2 to respond to the attacks upon air bases where we have personnel, I don't think he had the Spanish option of sitting on his hands at that point, personally.
No, and I agree with the way Starmer dealt with that, and I disagree with the criticism he's come in, because if he'd done anything different, Farage and Badenoch would have taken the other side of the argument and attacked him that way anyway. It wouldn't make any difference what he did. They were going to criticise. So I agree with what he did. But I think because we've had this special relationship with America in the past, we're a little bit less likely to stand up to Trump than maybe we should be. Yeah. But we need to remember that Trump's not permanent. He's only there for a short time, and we need a relationship with the US after he's gone. So we need to stand up to him and stick to our sort of guns whilst he's there.
And the problem is America isn't. I mean, it's as if there were a king across the water or a court that we could visit, where containing the people who are the meaningful and viable opposition to Trump, and partly because of the nature of the American political system, and partly because, sadly, of the disarray that the Democratic Party has been in now for at least 1.5 electoral cycles, that there isn't another court. It's a bit like when the leader of the opposition is fated by a foreign leader because there's a chance that the leader of the opposition will become prime minister. There's nothing we can do as a country to keep that line of communication open because there's no leader in waiting in the United States of America from the other side of the political divide. And of course there's three sides now of the political divide. There is the Republicans, there is the Democrats, and there is the MAGA. And God forbid that the successor to Donald Trump is another member of the madhouse. It's unlikely because you probably need to be mad to run the madhouse. You probably need to be mad to be the leader of the madhouse. And the other men around him are pathetic and craven, sycophantic and racist, hideous, white supremacist. But they're not mad in the sense that Donald Trump is mad, which is what we're examining now. The question of what the hell do the rest of us do if he is just mad? Dominic Ellis has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 25 minutes to 12 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I think a little bit of Idiot's Corner. What do you do if you're a Donald Trump fan and you're watching this unfold? What on earth do you cling to or sign up for as a way of avoiding the fact that you're... And I presume... most people are following the Daily Mail's lead, and you, or to be more precise, they're following Basil Fawlty's lead. So if I were to be stuck in a lift with you, and I said, "Hey, aren't you the guy who last week was attacking Keir Starmer for not joining Donald Trump's war? Where are you today?"
Don't mention the war.
Oh, yeah. OK. So that would be the only sort of vaguely sustainable position to adopt. Nobody's really pretending that it's a good idea, although Nigel Farage tells the Financial Times this morning that Donald Trump is right about Iran, which is an utterly meaningless comment, given that he wouldn't be able to tell you what exactly it is that Donald Trump is doing in Iran or why. But I don't know what an entrant, an applicant to Idiot's Corner would actually look like. So I'll have a look in either this junction or during the next break. I'll have a little look through my inbox and see if we've got anybody who is thick enough or corrupt enough or racist enough to still be pretending that Donald Trump is embarked upon a wise course, or that it isn't the single most important subject facing the country at the moment. Because that's your choice, isn't it? You either don't mention it at all, which is channeling Basil Fawlty.
Don't mention the war.
Or you go full Daily Mail, which is just ignore the fact that all your columnists were calling for it until 10 minutes ago and don't even mention the war until page 10 of the newspaper. Or you just stick your fingers in your ears and you go la 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 la. Or, of course, you get James Cleverly on your programme to talk about Peter Mandelson. Without mentioning Boris Johnson, which would be an extraordinary path to follow as well. But the alternative is shame and humiliation. I'm thinking of Andrew Neil, the way in which there is no shame and no humiliation for people anymore. My American friends keep asking if Britain's lost its marbles after Starmer snubbed Trump on Iran. Sadly, there's only one answer, wrote Andrew Neil about a week ago. And then yesterday, that Trump started the attacks on Iran without even having the semblance of a plan to keep the Strait of Hormuz open is both a mystery and a scandal from which he might not recover politically. You know which sound effect we need now, Keith, don't you? It's
don't mention the war.
No, it's not that one. It's the ferret, isn't it? It's got to be the ferret. It's got to be what's it called again? Duking, deking, dinking? We've got to be the ferret. You go in a week from saying, my American friends keep asking if Britain's lost its marbles after Starmer snubbed Trump on Iran. Sadly, there's only one answer. And then a week later, you are literally describing that war, which Starmer must have lost its marbles over, Britain must have lost its marbles over for not joining in, as being both a mystery and a scandal from which Donald Trump might not recover politically. It's not quite as humiliating as Richard Littlejohn going from explaining that he's never been more ashamed to be British to literally writing about lollipop ladies, because the alternative would be to acknowledge what an absolute weapon he's been over this issue. Again, caveat, I mean, he's always a weapon over every issue. Sometimes it's hideous, sometimes it's just thick. But my goodness me, the phrase reverse ferret seems strangely inadequate, doesn't it? Thank goodness we've got a sound effect. Have you ever heard a ferret? It's gone a bit north at digital now, hasn't it? I mean, that is, what was that? An extraordinary tirade depicting Donald Trump in fascinating fashion. And then 4 minutes later, I'm asking you if you've ever heard a ferret in the wild. But anyway, if you haven't, this is what they sound like. So if you want to get the idea of a reverse ferret, just imagine that noise with one of those beeping noises that lorries make when they're reversing. So that would be like a reverse ferret. So you look. It's been a long week. I need to have a bit of fun sometimes. You do the ferret, I'll do the lorry. Beep, beep, beep. That was a reverse ferret. It sounded very similar to the world's smallest violin, didn't it, that we got out on last week's programme. Let's go to Estonia. Nick is there. Nick, what would you like to say, if you can remember?
Well, I think going back to your reasons why, I think the strongest analogy you made was the ogreish appetites, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not mine. It's Edward Docks. I can recommend the article. The headline is Fee Fi Fo Trump, how an ogre won back the White House, and it was published in The Guardian in January of last year.
Okay. All right. How can I say? Yeah. Well, going back to that, I think there's no argument that the guy's impulsive, and so if impulsiveness is how he operates, then you're really going to struggle to find underlying reasons for it, or rather, long-standing reasons beyond things like, I don't know, owning Obama or something like that further down the line. If he can fix Venezuela when the other one couldn't, things like that. That, to my mind, is probably the strongest candidate. And I think the other benefits, whether it's postponing Epstein files or making money, just play into that. But I wouldn't say there's much more.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, retrospect is a wonderful thing, 2020 hindsight. The idea that we would somehow keep him sweet by giving him a state visit is a consequence of thinking that he has reason, thinking that there is a relationship between A and B, or A to Z. We do X, Y will follow. But if you're dealing with an ogre, you've fed his appetite. And that's it now. He's gone. He's fed his appetite. Thank you. State visit. I am Trump. I am honoured. And then 24 hours later, he hates you again if it suits him. If his appetite needs hatred, he's going to attack Keir Starmer. And he does. He compares him to Churchill unfavourably.
Well, I mean, in that sense, giving him the things that he wants is not really any different to giving Putin the thing that he wants.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. And it leaves the poor old king in a right old pickle, doesn't it? Because he's supposed to be going there next month. And everyone who will write, and if they haven't already, they will, Simon Jenkins probably has already, will write about how the king needs to go to America because we need to keep Donald Trump. But of course, if he is an ogre, possessed only of appetites, then sending the king to visit him is just feeding him again.
Well, I think that in that respect, I think, was it a caller? I was on the phone, so I heard the radio, but I wasn't too sure who it was. There was someone who mentioned talking about how America is permanent, but Trump is temporary.
Yeah.
And I think if we act with that in mind, we don't have to actively try and sabotage America, but we don't necessarily have to, basically...
No, we don't need to bend the knee for Trump, because that's the point. Bending the knee is it's a compromise. It's often seen as cowardly, but you bend the knee as a pragmatic calculation on what's actually best for you. So bending the knee is historically an act of self-interest. But if you're bending the knee for somebody who doesn't recognise any interests but his own, then you are debasing yourself for no reason. Which brings us back to the royal visit, actually, which we haven't talked about much this week. I think we ended last week talking about it. And the fact that, once again, Vladimir Putin is going to be absolutely delighted with the way that everything is going. And we're sitting here trying to make sense of a world in which the Secretary of State for Defence in the United Kingdom warns that Vladimir Putin is helping Iran and Donald Trump is helping Vladimir Putin, even as he helps Iran attack Americans. 4 more Americans coming back in body bags. And Donald Trump's just written cheques for Vladimir Putin by lifting sanctions, which were already pretty pathetic, on their oil industry. Thank you, Nick. Actually, if you're in Estonia, I shouldn't let you go without asking about the ramifications of the Putin angle. I mean, what the lifting of sanctions on Russia will mean in your part of the world.
Well, it's certainly alarming, because at the end of the day, it does seem like the only lesson that either Trump or Putin will ever understand is a bloody nose.
Yes.
And at the moment, the belligerence is being rewarded rather than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautifully put for both of them. Go on, sorry.
It's highly frustrating that you've got this short-term attitude that Trump's demonstrating. Well, his short-term ability, I think, is really what we would call it. And that's going to have potential ramifications for people living in this part of the world.
Yes, it is. And I mean, it almost empowers Putin, who's actually having a relatively terrible time of it at the moment at the hands of Volodymyr Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. But, of course, this is going to be an epic distraction from that as well. So all 10 reasons can be true But they are not actually the reasons why Donald Trump has gone to war. That's two questions there. So if I had said to you, what will the war achieve? It could achieve all 10 of these things. It could literally distract from Epstein. It could keep Netanyahu sweet. It could improve his popularity. Spoiler alert, it won't. It could effect meaningful regime change. Spoiler alert, it hasn't. It could help the Iranian people. Spoiler alert, yeah, you know the rest. It could raise a lot of money. Spoiler alert, it has. It could give him grounds for cancelling the midterms. It might. It could distract from Ukraine. It has. It could temporarily alleviate his boredom. It has. So all of those things could be true, except the ones that aren't. But none of them would be the reason why he did it, because the reason why he did it is the reason why he goes to the lavatory, or the reason why he fills his face with cheeseburgers, or the reason why he grabs women by their genitals, because he wants to. And in that moment, if he wants to, he has to.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:48. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. And I was wondering earlier, and to be honest, I had to search quite far back into the programme for this, but I have found an entrant for Idiot's Corner on a morning like this. What do you do if the love you have for Trump's racism, misogyny or climate change denial is so complete that even now you can't recognise the catastrophe that he's visited upon the Middle East? And thankfully, Paul Fleets, I don't know whether that's one word or two, in Sheffield has been in touch. He writes, James, why are you slagging Donald Trump off again? Why not have a topical debate about how thick your friend and ex-colleague David Lammy is by calling Cyprus a NATO country, but it will never happen? Well, Paul Fleets in Sheffield, let's begin with your definition of the word topical, because you are referring to something that happened a week ago today, so that would not be topical. Your definition of the word debate is I mean, in need of a bit of help as well, because what you describe actually happened, so there is no debate about whether or not David Lammy did accidentally describe Cyprus as a NATO country instead of a NATO ally, as he clarified himself just a couple of hours later. So it isn't topical, and it wouldn't be a debate. And, I mean, David isn't a friend of mine. He did work here, but so did Katie Hopkins, mate. I don't know whether you'd be picking her as an example of somebody that I should be talking about. And finally, the question I'm really interested in, Paul Fleets in Sheffield, is why you want me to talk in a negative way about a black man on a day like today. What do you think it is about David Lammy that a week after an event in which he made a mistake that he swiftly corrected, you think it would be more important than talking about a war in the Middle East that's just seen 4 American soldiers coming home in body bags? What is it about David Lammy, Paul Fleets in Sheffield, that boils your blood so completely, do you think? Is it the fact he went to Harvard University? I should have double-checked that. Is it the fact that he's foreign secretary? Is it the fact that he presented a show on LBC for a while? Is it the fact that he made a mistake when describing Cyprus as a NATO country instead of a NATO ally? It's none of those things, is it? What do you think it is about David Lammy that Paul Fleets in Sheffield, who doesn't understand the word topical or the word debate or the word friend, what is it about David Lammy that makes him think we should be talking about how thick, his word, not mine, David Lammy is on a day like today, instead of talking about the actual war that Donald Trump is currently undertaking? If you know Paul Fleets in Sheffield, then do ask him what it is about David Lammy that somehow has boiled his brain to such a degree that he's forgotten what topical means, forgotten what debate means, forgotten what friend means, and focused entirely on something about David Lammy that I can't quite put my finger on that really upsets and outrages Paul Fleets in Sheffield. Answers on a postcard, please. 11:50, and there is Idiot's Corner. So there was one person just itching to get in there. And I'll leave you to work out whether it's Donald Trump's racism, sexism, misogyny or climate change denial that most appeals to people like him. James is in Gloucester. James, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. First-time caller. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome.
I picked up the phone today. Well, first of all, just on bending the knee to Trump.
Yes.
I just think that we need to completely abandon that idea now. I think it's becoming quite apparent that we are in the midst of a complete overhaul of the geopolitical system in the world, and I think that it's quite evident that America's power and influence is waning. They're becoming weaker by the day. Nobody is taking them seriously.
I don't know that I agree with you. I think Donald Trump is all of those things, but America is still America. The United States is still the United States, and it will still be there when he's long gone, and it will still be the most powerful military force on the planet, or the second most, probably the most.
Yeah, true. I mean, that is true, but I just feel like a lot of American military power is projected power, so the illusion of this sort of invincibility. Yeah. And I think with this debacle in Iran and the way that it's going, it's just sort of like poking holes, and people are starting to see through that facade. And I just think it's terribly damaging to their reputation. And I think China and Russia are quite happy to sit back and let it happen. And, you know, it's just with the moving of military equipment out of South Korea, Japan, apparently out of the Baltic states now, and things like that. I just don't think it's it's just not showing strength.
So I mean, you're taking the question very seriously, as I would hope everybody is. But you're really going into detail on how you respond to the fact that Trump is Trump, whether or not we think he's a sort of morass of insatiable appetites or something even worse. Doesn't matter. It's what he has done to the United States, and what he's shown can always be done to the United States that should inform our movement, I presume, closer to Europe, or finding a sort of alliance of like-minded countries that would offer up an alternative to the hegemony that Trump has represented over the years, or America has represented.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just about to say. I think I used to think of myself as British first and foremost, but as time goes on, I'm starting to think of myself as European, because I think we need to be more collaborative with our European partners. I think Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet and get serious about its own defence and its own place in the world. And I don't think that Britain is big enough and, you know, sort of strong enough to do that on its own. I think we need to do it collectively. And we need to stop, you know, depending on the systems, you know, stuff like payment systems and things like that we rely so heavily on the US for.
Gosh, yeah.
We need to get away from that, because we're so reliant on them that when we find ourselves in a position like this, where we've got an American president that doesn't take us seriously, is quite happy to inflict pain on us, we're sort of left high and dry, because we haven't got their systems are deeply embedded in our country and in Europe. You know, for example, you know, the NHS and our military, they use, you know, American AI services, servers, all that kind of stuff. That needs to be
Palantir, of course, are inveigling their way into the British infrastructure in ways that a lot of people, I think, including Carol Cadwallader, who's been proved right about pretty much everything in the last 10 years, have been warning about. I think their CEO on a clip yesterday looking borderline unhinged. So, I mean, whether or not we should be throwing open the door and rolling out the red carpet for these characters is another question linked to everything. Say again?
It's very scary.
It is quite scary. And of course, some things are too scary to think about, which is why we embrace either a conspiracy theory, because it's a sort of reassuring alternative to chaos, or, as we seem to have done with Donald Trump, and I'm guilty of this, as is, I think, pretty much everybody except Ian Dunt this morning, we're all trying to analyse, we're all trying to rationalise, we're all trying to explain and understand. What if you can't explain and understand Trump? And that immediately puts the state visit in my mind. There'll be a million other examples, some of which will be even better. But we worked so hard to believe that the state visit was a good idea, because we knew what Trump was, and whether you're a royalist or not, you can see the king as the embodiment of Britain, whether you like that or not. It would involve Britain debasing itself in order to curry favour with Donald Trump. But what if you can't curry favour with Donald Trump, because he isn't built that way? He is just going to veer from one appetite to the next, to the next, to the next. And that is why you almost, under James's rather brilliant analysis just there, you almost cut him out of the picture altogether and start governing. And I don't know that Starmer has got the skill set for this, to explain to the British people that you are now pursuing a path that is going to affect generational change, and that the United Kingdom's proximity to the United States of America is consigned to the history books. We now look east instead of west. or north. I mean, we now look for alliances and bonds that recognise the A bit of NATO has effectively been taken off the board. I think he's probably right, but I don't think that we are capable of absorbing fully the scale of the sea change that would entail, the scale of the sea change that would demand. And if you ever think that we are, or I am, or you are exaggerating the seriousness of the moment, then stories like that juxtaposition in today's bulletin should give you a bit of a wake-up call. John Healey, the Secretary of State for Defence, has warned that Vladimir Putin is helping Iran attack American and British positions. Donald Trump has decided to lift sanctions on Russian oil so that Vladimir Putin can fill his pockets as a direct consequence. Vladimir Putin has been given permission to profiteer from Donald Trump's war in Iran by Donald Trump. Go on, stick that through your mangle. Vladimir Putin has been given permission to profiteer from Donald Trump's war in Iran by Donald Trump. No wonder the Daily Bloody Mail doesn't mention anything until page 10 today, and even then offers up an analysis of how catastrophic everything is going without mentioning that they were all in favour of it 10 minutes ago. No wonder Kemi Badenoch is claiming that she never said that Keir Starmer should have been joining this war when we all heard her say that. No wonder James Cleverly is touring studios this morning, having his toes tickled by client journalists, talking about Peter Mandelson instead of Keir Starmer's brilliant decision not to join the war. They were all attacking him for not joining last week. Donald Trump has given permission to Vladimir Putin to profiteer from Donald Trump's war in Iran. That was well done, Keith. I like that. Sounds almost like we planned it. Again, I ended the last hour, or began the last hour, by saying, how do you turn that into a phone-in? And I don't know. But go on, look me in the eye and tell me that's not an absolutely chilling observation. Donald Trump has given Vladimir Putin permission to profiteer from the war that Donald Trump is waging in Iran, even while Vladimir Putin continues to pursue his criminal and illegal war against the people of Ukraine in the sovereign territory of Ukraine. And now we'll have a phone-in about trying to work out what Donald Trump's motivation is for doing that, except we won't anymore, will we? But we still don't know what we'll do instead.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Minutes after 12 is the time. I had two contenders for the final hour of the programme today, and I've decided which one I'm going to go with because it is more topical, it's more relevant to the situation in the Middle East, but it will affect a fairly severe gear change. We're going to be talking about Dubai. The other one I was going to look at was, I quite like, especially Fridays at 12, something a bit more light-hearted. The idea of a tattoo that you really regret. And the reason why I was going to talk about that is a story about, I think, a Russian bloke who had the logo for Domino's Pizza tattooed on his ankle in return for a promised 100 free pizzas a year for 100 years. I mean, you'd think about... when I was in my early 20s, I think I'd have been quite up for that. I love pizzas. So 100 years of free pizza in return for a tattoo. He's lost a court battle after the promotional offer was withdrawn. So 2018, 350 winners of a Domino's Forever campaign in which you receive 100 free pizza vouchers per year for 100 years. All you needed to do was get a tattoo of the company's logo on a visible part of your body and post the results on social media. He got it. But then 5 years later, they cancelled it entirely. Announcing that the vouchers were no longer valid, but Domino's did offer to fund cover-up tattoos for participants. And he took them to court. He said, I got sick of pizza, but obligations to customers have to be fulfilled. I love this guy. I got sick of pizza, but obligations to customers have to be fulfilled. It's a matter of principle, he told a Moscow radio station in 2023. But 3 years later, on Wednesday, the district court ruled in the company's favour and rejected the disgruntled tattooed Moscow resident's appeal. I was going to use that, because I am Alan Partridge, to launch a phone-in about tattoos that you really regret. And there's another story in the news today that takes us back to many, many years ago. So tattoos used to be one of my bugbears. I used to do phone-ins about why you should never let your children be taught by people who've got visible tattoos. Because I was an idiot, before anybody gets cross with me or sends in, I was an idiot. In many ways, I still am, but I was a much bigger idiot then than I am now. The other one that I used to talk about all the time that is also in the news today is not evidence that I was an idiot. I was right then and I'm right now. London is considering an extra charge for SUV drivers to come in to the capital. Transport for London is looking at an increase in the number of 20 miles per hour zones and a cut to the speed limits on its fastest roads from 50 to 40, and also a possible extra charge, a possible surcharge for larger, heavier cars when they come into London. And that would have been a shoo-in for a phone-in on this programme when I started on LBC. In fact, it was probably my first hobby horse. I wasn't a very political animal when I started here. I'd done about 18 months on daytime TV when I had to have an argument every day with the other people in the studio, including Matthew Wright, of course, who will be with you on LBC this weekend. But I wasn't a very political animal. I was more into, like, you know, showbiz, culture, arts. Wanted to be a theatre critic when I first left university, or a book reviewer. I wasn't a very... It's you've radicalised. It's your fault, you know, that I'm so political now. I did an event a couple of years ago when my last book came out with my old editor, a lovely woman, Rosie Boycott, Lady Boycott now, who's editor of the Daily Express and made me showbiz editor. And we're sitting on the stage at the Hay Literary Festival, and I've written How They Broke Britain, which, if you don't know, is a richly detailed account of how this country was betrayed and diminished by people like David Cameron, Boris Johnson, Paul Dacre, Rupert Murdoch, Nigel Farage, and a few others. And the first thing she said was, when did you get political then? She said, because when you were my showbiz editor, you'd never had anything to say about politics. I said, well, politics was quite boring then. And you gave me the choice between writing about Norman Lamont or writing about Norman Cook. And I chose Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim to you. Because obviously that was a much more exciting world to be in than the world of politics at the time, in the sort of William Hague era of the Conservative Party, when it looked like Labour were going to be in power forever. So it's your fault that I'm more political. And I wasn't a very political animal back then. So when I took the job on LBC, I almost welcomed this management decision we had that we should stop talking about the news. I don't know if you remember this. Adrian Charles touched on it yesterday in his brilliant Guardian column when he remembered a colleague in the phone-in business being described as someone who just wanted to do phone-ins about what your favourite crisp flavour was. And Adrian opined that would actually be quite a good phone-in. You know how my brain works. I would do a phone-in about why you can't have a favourite crisp flavour. Because even though you might think your favourite crisp flavour is salt and vinegar, there will be a moment in your life where you'd much rather have a packet of Skips or a cheese and onion. So I find the very concept of a favourite crisp flavour to be unconvincing. So that's the kind of phone-in I would do. Everyone else would do a phone-in about what your favourite crisp flavour was, and then everyone else would complain in quite a snobbish fashion about us doing such shallow things when we should be talking about the war in Iran. But I would have talked about the call for SUV drivers to face an extra charge to drive in London. It's before I developed my allergy to motoring topics. And it would have been okay. I mean, to be fair, if it wasn't for the other stories that are contenders for this hour, we may have done the SUVs. We may have we may have pretended that it wasn't a motoring story and had some sort of conversation about why people drive these hideous vehicles. And now I realise that in a way we are about to have that phone-in. But it's not about SUVs. It's about living in Dubai. Is it the same impulse? What draws people to Dubai? 0345 6060 973. It's a combination of greed and selfishness, right? I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to worry about anybody else in society. I don't care about the terms and conditions in which the people who built my apartment live. Why do people drive SUVs? I don't care about pedestrians. I don't care about other road users. I don't want to worry about the terms and conditions under which other people live or drive or walk or cycle. I am in my enormous tank and I feel powerful and safe. Why do people want to move to Dubai? I am in my fancy flat and I feel powerful and, well, until this week I felt safe. because that's why Dubai is in the news. It's one of the reasons why Dubai is in the news. Did you know that you could be jailed in Dubai for taking photos of missiles flying over your own head? Did you know that? I kid you not. The British Embassy in the United Arab Emirates has warned Britons in the region against breaking the country's laws by taking pictures or sharing images of the impact of Iranian missiles. A 60-year-old British man has been charged under cybercrime laws in Dubai after allegedly filming Iranian missiles over the city. This is the place that various freaks and weirdos have moved to while claiming that freedom of speech was under threat in Keir Starmer's Britain and that the streets of London were so unsafe that you couldn't walk down the road wearing a £2 million watch without running the risk of being mugged. So all these freaks and weirdos moved to Dubai, where they are literally not allowed to take photographs of missiles that are flying in their direction. Let's just focus for a minute on those 2 or 3 points to get... Why did you move to Dubai? Oh, because I really hate the clampdown on freedom of speech in the United Kingdom and I feel unsafe there. Okay, so you've moved to a country where missiles are currently being fired at you and the government doesn't let you take pictures of them because their freedom of expression laws are so severe. It's almost a Stuart Lee routine, this, isn't it? And if you're listening, Stu, all right, mate, hope you're well. It's almost a Stuart Lee routine, this. Oh, you can't even take pictures of missiles in Dubai anymore without getting locked up, except it's true. Why did you move to Dubai? Freedom of speech. What's happened now? Oh, I just got sent to jail for taking a picture of a missile. Where was the missile? It was heading for my flat. Why else did you move to Dubai? Because it's really safe compared to London. So you've moved to a place where they're firing missiles at you because it was safer than London, and you're not allowed to take pictures of the missiles because you've moved to a place that had better freedom of speech than the place that you... I mean, how hard is it now, hand on heart, to muster up a single scintilla of sympathy for the types of freaks and weirdos that I'm describing, and traitors as well, because to move to a foreign country, to surrender your responsibilities as a taxpayer to the education system, to the health service, to the transport infrastructure that you have benefited from and your own children have benefited from, and if they don't stay in Dubai, they will benefit from in the future, but you just don't want to pay your share, so you're going to move to Dubai. And you're going to pretend that it's not just because of greed, it's because of freedom of speech when you don't have any. You are literally not allowed to post anything on social media that could disturb public security. And it's up to them what disturbs public security. And I had no idea that this was true. Listen, for the avoidance of doubt, I've got friends who have moved to Dubai. I've got a couple of mates who work there. And obviously not everybody who has moved there is a freak or an idiot. I categorically mean that, and I'm not just saying it because I'm worried about the messages I'll have on my phone when I get home or when I get off air later. But I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the people who have made a great play. So there's one of Farage's mates, isn't there? Candy. He's all over the Epstein files. And he is the treasurer of Reform, and he's in Dubai while trying to sell a flat in this country for 175 million quid. And as the missiles flew, he said he felt safer. And you had this thought that, is he completely bonkers, or is somebody, because he's rich enough not to need the money, nobody's going to be paying him for coming out with this claptrap. What on earth is he playing at? And then you actually learn, as I have learned this week and this week only, you actually learn that the regime in Dubai will lock you up if you say anything unpleasant about the place. Like, for example, oh, look, here's a missile that's heading towards my sitting room window. So whether or not that explains why someone would be... well, to be fair, if you've signed up to Nigel Farage's party, then you're not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer anyway. But how on earth you could report from a borderline war zone that you feel safer there than you do in London, while simultaneously trying to persuade someone to pay 175 million quid to buy an apartment in London that you're flogging. There's a level of stupid there that once again proves my theory that you don't need to be clever to make an awful lot of money in this world. You just need to be committed and greedy enough. But the notion that you can get locked up for it, fines, imprisonment, deportation, for taking pictures and posting images of things that are happening in front of you, while claiming, of course, as Farage's outfit constantly does, and there's that hideous Isabel Oakeshott woman as well, who's going out with one of them. She's moved there and been posting constantly about how there aren't any missiles, or if there are, they go to a different school. Without and complaining about freedom of speech issues in this country, like they all do. And of course, it's Farage's outfit. I think she's going out with Tice. It's either Richard Tice or 30p Lee. I can't remember which one of them it is. But they invite that hideous woman onto the... Oh, and also they hate Muslims and Sharia law. Guess what? Spoiler alert, Dubai is a Muslim state and it lives under Sharia law. But they invite that hideous woman who wanted to set fire to refugees while they were sleeping in their bed onto the stage because she's a free speech warrior, and they're not allowed. They're living in a country where they're not allowed to post a picture of a bomb that's heading for their head. It's literally flying over their own head. Take a picture, stick it on social media, get sent to jail. I've done it again. I can't exaggerate that. That's just true. That's what's happened. I'm standing in Dubai, writing for the Daily Telegraph about how awful the restrictions on free speech in the United Kingdom are and how unsafe London is. And I've moved to a country, and also how awful Muslims are. And I've moved to a country that's full of... Oh, and God, Shakira law has been brought in by Sadiq Khan. And these are my people. This is what I spend my life on Twitter, courting and cultivating, those sort of prejudices and bigotries. Muslims are awful. They're bringing in Shakira law. London is really, really unsafe. And freedom of speech is under threat. And I've moved to Dubai, where if a missile is flying over my head and I take a picture of it and put it on Twitter, I will go to jail. But Keir Starmer's stamping out our free speech and Sadiq Khan wants to bring in Shakira law. You live in a place that has Sharia law, and if you take a picture of a bomb as it flies over your head, they will put you in prison. What on earth is the phone in here? 17 minutes after 12 is the time. A couple of things, actually. I have got a phone. 21 people have been charged under the UAE's cybercrime laws for posting pictures and videos of missiles that are aimed at them. So, when you are in Dubai, and I do honestly accept and acknowledge that not everybody who's moved there is greedy and selfish. There are other reasons. In fact, it's an old pal of mine who used to work here who's moved there, and he's the least greedy, least selfish person that any of us have ever met. Unless he's got a big box of cream eggs in front of him, in which he could quite happily eat every single one without any help or support. So I've got a lovely friend who's out in Dubai, and he is neither greedy nor selfish, except with cream eggs. And he will not be alone. I got other friends who've moved there for various reasons. What was his record? Did he do 10 in one go? He did 10 cream eggs in one go once. So I miss him so much. He was such a good force for fun in the. And anyway, not greedy, not selfish. Lives in Dubai, right? But the public figures, the so-called influencers, who have been politicising their decision to be selfish and greedy by claiming that this country, our home, the United Kingdom, London, is somehow unsafe, or that their free speech is under threat, from a country where missiles are being fired at them and they will be sent to prison for posting a picture of those missiles. There should be no way back for these people, should there, to, I don't know, respectability or public profile. If you've done this thing, you've maligned your own country and attacked Muslims while demonising Sharia law and claiming that London is unsafe and lying about free speech being under threat while lionising a woman that wanted to burn refugees to death in their own beds. And you've moved to this country where you will be in prison if you post a picture of a missile that has been aimed at you. I don't know what the word is to describe you. And I can't do that as a phone-in because of Ofcom. Can I? what word would you use to describe the people that I have just described to you? You can't come on the radio and say that word. Now, I know, fair play to you, it's entirely accurate, but you can't say that word on the radio. Or that one. Oh, and you certainly can't say that one. But what else do you do? So, when you're in Dubai, how aware are you of what an extraordinarily repressive regime it is? 0345 6060 973. That's all I want to know. I have a little bit of fun, but I'm not that person anymore. I'm not going to make the phones ring by saying that everybody in Dubai is a greedy, tax-avoiding fraud. Categorically not. And I don't mean it and I don't say it. But I do want to know, given that we've just painted a rather compelling picture of the fact that if you're on that side of politics, claiming that it's a wonderful refuge from attacks on free speech and safety, you've been rendered truly and irredeemably ridiculous, but it won't affect your employability at the Daily Telegraph comment pages or the Daily Mail, I'm sure, so don't panic. How aware are you of just how repressive and strict the regime is when you're there? That's all I want to know. 0345 6060 973. It's 12:21.
James O'Brien on LBC.
I missed it. It's up there, isn't it, with the time I ask you to phone in if you haven't got a phone? Because if you are in Dubai, or if you are hoping to ever go back to Dubai, then you can't tell me the truth about Dubai. Full stop. Next phone in. Give me a ring if you've never had a phone. Give me a ring if you haven't got a phone. Give me a ring and tell me about how repressive it is in Dubai. You can only do that if you're never going to go back to Dubai. I don't know if they'd keep a list and you'd turn up at the airport and say, hang on a minute, are you the Simon in Dover that rang James O'Brien in March of 2026 and said that you can't say boo to a goose in Dubai without getting locked up? Because if you are, we're going to lock you up. I mean, there's a certain symmetry to that. It's almost Joseph Heller-esque, isn't it, in its complexity? But there is a danger that I have set up a phone in that is, by definition, impossible. But that's never stopped me before, except that one time when I changed my mind and didn't do a phone in about what it's like not to have a phone. Shall I shut up and take some calls? OK. Simon is in Dover. Simon, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. I was listening to your preamble. I must admit, I was very, very angry.
Yes.
My daughter has lived in Dubai for the last 7 years. She's not an influencer. She's worked in the financial sector. She's not a freak. She's not a weirdo. She's not a traitor, and she doesn't own a car. So I'd like to put the record straight on that one first of all.
I did already do that, not with direct reference to your daughter.
Halfway you did, halfway.
Well, I didn't mention the car because I don't know her personally, but I did point out that I've got friends and colleagues, former colleagues who are there, who are lovely, lovely people, and they're there for perfectly reasonable reasons. But they don't write for newspapers or go all over social media claiming that freedom of speech in this country is somehow in mortal danger, or that London is so unsafe that you can't go to the theatre without having your trousers stolen.
No, that's true. I mean, basically, just a little bit of background. My daughter got her degree. She worked in London in the financial sector in a house share. Basically, the rent was extortionate. There was 4 other young professionals living there with her, 2 females, 2 males. There was 1 bathroom in the property, so they had to give each other a 15-minute window, each one before they all went off to work.
Yeah,
and so actually,
it's a familiar picture. Of course she did. Of course
she decided as a young person that I want to make my life better by working hard, and Dubai was an opportunity for a young person to go and try and make their lives better.
And I'm all for that.
It's just awful.
I'm all for
the way
that.
These people are being portrayed.
Well, no, because they're not. We're not portraying your daughter as being like that because she doesn't tick any of the boxes that we've been describing all morning. But if she did take a picture of a missile that was heading towards her apartment, God forbid, she'd be sent to prison.
Yes, I mean, that is a fact. I mean, that's a simple fact.
Did you know
of
that
the life there.
before this week?
Of course I did, yeah.
So what? I didn't. I mean, to be fair, I don't have a daughter there.
It's that old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans. You take the rough with the smooth. It's certainly no paradise, but it certainly had, up until the last 10 days, some great advantages.
Yes,
and
pros and cons.
People taking malicious pleasure as it falls apart.
No, I mean, some people might be, but I also think my animus here is pretty clear. I am directing my malice, which is probably a fair word, at the hideous traitors who have posted from Dubai that freedom of speech in this country is under threat and that safety on the streets of my city is so bad that they'd rather be in a war zone than in Knightsbridge. Those are the people that I'm cross with. Of course, what I can't do...
Well, they're just idiots, aren't they?
Well, yes, but they've got a much bigger voice in the British discourse than your daughter does.
Yeah. But I just wanted to put the...
Are you worried about her, mate? No, I'm glad you have, and I recognise that.
Of course I am. I mean, yes. I'm her father, and I love her dearly, and we're in communication frequently, and it's a very difficult time. And I just have a lot of resentment to how people are being portrayed who live there.
Well, I don't want to push back too much, because obviously she's your daughter and you're her dad and you love her and you're worried about her. But she will come back here at some point.
Of course.
And she will avail herself of all the things that taxpayers have been paying for while she's been in Dubai paying none.
No, but when she was, those last 7 years, what has she had of the British tax money? She hasn't used the NHS.
And what has she paid for the NHS that she will use when she'll come back?
But when she comes back, she'll start paying, won't she?
Well, she'll be in an enormous profit there, won't she?
Because not necessarily. There's a lot of people who've never paid for the NHS who live in this country for 40, 50 years.
Well, two wrongs don't make a right, do they, Simon?
Well,
she'll be one of them when she comes back. She'll be one of the people that hasn't paid into the... She'll be one of the people that won't have paid into the NHS for 10 years. If she sends your grandchildren to state school, I will have paid for their education and she won't have chipped in at all.
Yeah, but at the moment, all I'm saying is that for the last 7 years she's paid no UK tax, and she's had nothing off the UK government.
And all I'm saying is that she'll come back and retire here and expect a pension and she'll be looked after. She'll avail herself of the NHS and she'll send her children to schools that I've paid for and she hasn't.
Well, she's got no children at the moment. We don't know if she's going to come back to the UK. So I would avoid arguing about future things which haven't happened yet.
Oh, you started it.
Well, no, you did with your rant. Calling my daughter a freak, a weirdo and a traitor.
I'd never called your daughter a freak, a weirdo and a traitor. I am now calling her someone who has prioritised comfort over contributing to the national interest, and that's absolutely fine.
Ambition, James, and aspiration.
Well, no, it's actually, there used to be a word for it in regards to Hong Kong. Do you know that word, filth?
No, I don't know.
Failed in London, try Hong Kong.
Well... maybe she did fail in London, huh?
No, I'm just reminding you what a nastier person than me might say in the context of a conversation in which I've made it crystal clear that I wasn't talking about her, and I wish her nothing but good. And when she comes back, if she comes back, I am proud to have paid my taxes so that she and any future grandchildren can avail themselves of all the services that she's chosen not to contribute to for the best part of a decade, because that's what taxes are for, to allow those of us who think they're important to look after those of you who don't. It's 12:30 and Amelia Cox has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:33. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. So Henry Riley is currently stampeding down the stairs in order to bring us the very latest instalment of Riley's Reform Roundup. What? A jingle? No. Well, let's wait until Henry gets here for that. I'm still keen to talk about Dubai, with the constant caveat that although everybody who has moved there for reasons of self-enrichment or aspiration, or whatever you prefer to call it, is probably going to come back to the United Kingdom at some point and avail themselves of all the services that those of us who haven't moved to tax-free states have continued to pay for. So the schools that you use, the hospitals that you use, the roads that you use, the army that defends you, the navy, the police force that you'll turn to in the event that you've got any trouble. And of course, a lot of these things you will benefit from if you're only visiting, despite the fact that you were born here and have chosen not to contribute to them. I fully recognise that not everybody there is motivated entirely by greed, but the influencers, particularly the ones who've made much of how safe Dubai is and how unsafe London is, you didn't need to do the second bit. You could have said, it's lovely here, you get locked up for taking photographs, so obviously there's not a lot of street crime. You could have just said that. You didn't have to pretend that London is some sort of hellhole or that London has particular problems compared to other cities. It's the lies about London that make you a traitor. And then, of course, you've got that other magnificent double reverse where they claim that free speech in this country is somehow under threat while living under Sharia law in a country where you'll be sent to prison for taking pictures. But you need a licence to be an influencer. So do we know whether or not Isabel Oakeshott has a licence to be an influencer? If you don't know who she is, she's kind of a big figure in reform. I think she's married to Lee Anderson. What is the thing that you need to be like a licence to be an influencer? to be honest, if I was married to Lee Anderson, I'd probably move to Dubai. So don't hold that against her. Anyway, speaking of reform, Henry Riley's just arrived. Henry, come in, pull up a chair. It's time. Have we got is this true?
Yeah, better believe it.
Who's done it?
You're here.
I feel that this exchange is a little bit like something out of The Office, because I feel like David Brent now. I'm going, I don't know who you are. You're definitely not Gareth. You're probably Martin Freeman's character, aren't you?
Yeah, what's his name again?
What was his name again?
Oh, that's annoying. I can't remember.
Dawn and... well, my inbox is finished now. It'll be the next 5 minutes with people reminding me of the text of the name of Martin Freeman's character. And so go on, who's done it? Are you not going to tell me who's done it? Have they done it?
They say.
What?
They say.
Oh, all right, go on then.
Riley's Reform Roundup. From Paul in Clapham.
Thank you, Paul. That's one of the few we've been sent.
That's just off. Should you not have run that? But I mean, I'm going to get into trouble with management now. You can't be just playing out that sort of tut. On the ferret's fine. That's contextualised. That's Lord above. Thank you. Well, this is not a reverse ferret. I'm standing by my position. That had no business being played. Thank you, Paul in Clapham. Production value's low.
I think it'd taken a while.
Yeah? What have you got for us?
There's a few. I've got 4 today, if that's all right, James. Let's start with, firstly, Nigel Farage has sparked... Tim, thank you.
Dan, Tim.
Yes. First one is Nigel Farage has sparked a bit of interest in some of his comments he's made, only in the last couple of hours, actually. He has said, and you'll recall there was a huge moment when Reform UK were the largest party on Worcestershire County Council, James, and Nigel Farage is saying it's sort of very important to win these authorities. Nigel Farage has said he wishes the party hadn't bothered to take control of Worcestershire County Council because of its financial problems.
What? That's not how politics work.
Well, they've recently approved...
I'm sure Keir Starmer wished they hadn't bothered taking control of the entire country because of the problems he inherited.
Well, he says that they've, as you know, they've recently approved a council tax rise of almost 9%.
Yeah, but hang on, that's a council tax cut.
Because it's not the maximum.
Is it the maximum?
It is the maximum, actually. So or no, maybe 4.99 plus 9%.
Because that was my favourite. That was my favourite story from... go on then. That from earlier in the week on the new feature on the James O'Brien programme. My favourite story this week from...
Riley's Reform Roundup.
I thought it was you. It sounds a bit like you.
Does it?
Yeah, a little bit. I thought it was actually you, and then I was going to get really cross. Do you think it was him as well? Keith thought, and he's a professional.
Yeah.
My favourite was when he said that he was taken to task for the fact that they hadn't cut council tax, and he claimed that they had put council tax up and cut it.
Yes, so if you don't... His argument was that if you don't increase it by the maximum amount, you can increase council tax, that it's actually a cut in council tax. So they've approved a 9% rise. Just to remind you, James, that's one of the largest council tax rises in history. That's to balance the books and to avoid effective bankruptcy.
Yes.
Nigel Farage said that we didn't make it bankrupt, and then when he was asked, in fact, let me give you his full quote. He said, Worcestershire, I have to say, we took minority control of a virtually bankrupt council. I wish we hadn't bothered, and went on to say, no, we didn't win the election. We formed a coalition, and we were always on a hiding to nothing. And of course, this is referencing what you mentioned earlier on, James. There was a lot of criticism because on the reform leaflet, it said cutting your taxes. But of course, in instances like this, Nigel Farage or his local authorities have increased council tax. Nigel Farage, though, says that was a national message rather than a local one.
So he doesn't want to be in control of territories that are in difficult financial circumstances.
That would be the implication based on what he's
saying. So he's resigning from politics entirely then, rather than seeking to become Prime Minister of a country that he has contributed to the economic decline of more than many, many others.
His argument is that it's proving to be a stick to beat him with, whereas he would point to areas where it hasn't gone up by the maximum amount.
But it has gone up.
And
he pledged to cut it.
On the reform leaflet, it said cutting your taxes.
And a lot of these leaflets had his signature on them.
But
it's nothing to do with him.
He says it's nothing to do with the local election campaign.
Is this on tape? Or are you just reading it out? Because he's developed a habit of saying no several times in quick succession, which gives me an opportunity to play another clip from earlier this week. Not immediately, of course, because Keith needs a little bit of time to get his ducks in order, and indeed his ferrets.
There is audio of that, James, but it hasn't come through to us yet. I've been trying to ask.
No. We didn't win the election. And also, when Beth Rigby was picking him up on the leaflets earlier in the week, he said, wrong. There's no limit.
It's changed a lot this week.
Eat your heart out, Paul in Clapham.
There's another story, James. Or am I moving on?
Yeah. If you want.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Friday. Do what you want.
Malcolm Offord, Lord Offord... No, in fact, he was Lord Offord. He's now not anymore. He said he's lost friends since joining Reform UK. He's their leader in Scotland. He was appointed the party's leader north of the border in January. He's asked about his sort of personal situation with friends. He said, yes, I've lost friends. Yeah. I've lost a couple of people who've said to me, we just can't support what the party stands for. I feel that is a sacrifice that I had to make.
Presumably his friends believe that the party stands for all manner of unpleasantnesses like racism, but that's a sacrifice he has to make in order to join the party that stands for the things that his former friends are repelled by.
He says also...
I feel very sorry for him. It reminds me of Lord Farquaad from Shrek.
Oh, Shrek. He said that his position has hardened on the issue of immigration.
His what has hardened?
His position
thank goodness.
On immigration has hardened since he joined Reform.
Yeah, funny that, isn't it? So is Nadeem Zahawi's, and he's an immigrant. He's a refugee.
He said that some of the language Nigel Farage has used on immigration had previously made him feel uncomfortable. And he sparked a bit of interest yesterday. He was giving a sort of fireside chat event. Our political editor in Scotland, Gina Davidson, was there. And at one point he suggested that the Reform UK in Scotland would abolish all quangos in Scotland. There's around 130 at the moment, but this is what he said.
Quangos are you going to cut? I'm not going to... There's 132 of them. We've got a spreadsheet. I've got a spreadsheet. There's 132 of them, and there's a further 40-odd public arm's length bodies that need to be looked at.
Will you tell us before the election?
You can run through. I mean, we can run through any number of them. I mean, you might even start. Well, you might start by saying all of them.
You want to get rid of all,
and then work backwards to which ones you actually want to keep.
Now, if you abolished all of the quangos, that would obviously include Food Standards Scotland.
Yeah, get rid of it.
The Care Inspectorate.
Care Plishmare.
Nature Scotland.
Yeah, down with nature.
The Scottish Legal Aid Boards.
Who needs legal aid? Apart from people accused of crimes they haven't... Well, everyone, really, who can't afford lawyers. Anyway, get rid of that.
Visit Scotland.
No.
National Museum Scotland.
Museums are for snowflakes.
Prisons inspectorates.
Yeah, don't need to inspect prisons. We just need to check they're still there.
Well, that would be his argument, but that's another claim by his party leader. Of course, they've got crucial elections in Scotland.
Quangos, I mean, it is almost as if everything that these people represent comes from radio phone-ins in about 1987, because quangos used to be a big thing when Labour were in power. I don't know if but you have to be 1997, wouldn't it? Or 2002. The Daily Mail pretended not to know what quangos were and pointed out that we've got quangos and former Labour politicians are running quangos. But, of course, most quasi-autonomous, non-governmental organisations are doing precisely the kind of work that you've just described. They're keeping an eye on food standards. They're keeping an eye on the care sector. They're looking after museums or nature or legal aid or tourism. But, of course, if you don't know any of that, then, like Malcolm Offord, you could reasonably call for them all to be abolished.
Certainly that's what he's hinting at the moment.
On we go.
There's two more, James, both local. Nottinghamshire's Reform Group have been asked, what are you afraid of after question-dodging claims? Now, let me tell you what has happened there. Nottinghamshire County Council, there was an effort to change the way how council meetings there work. They set up a group to assess the effectiveness and see if there were changes that could streamline the decision-making process in council meetings. Grateful to a few tips I've had from the Nottinghamshire area on this. One of the proposals was to cut from 60 minutes to 45 minutes some question time in council meetings, to cut the 60-minute time for motions in half to half an hour, and reduce the time council members spend debating a meeting item. Opposition councillors have said that this is removing valuable debate. Yeah. Reform UK say it's more business-like and helps council get business done faster and ensure that all meeting topics get discussed. Another key element that's been criticised, and it may seem small fry...
They're banning questions, or at least reducing the amount of time available for questions.
That's the criticism.
So in Worcestershire, they don't want to be in charge because the finances are in a mess.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert, welcome to Britain. And in Nottinghamshire, they don't want the other politicians to have the space they currently have to ask them questions about the things that they're doing.
That is the criticism levied by the opposition.
Sounds like Dubai.
Well, there's a supplementary question which is allowed in council meetings.
Oh, yes.
They want to. They've drawn criticism for one of the elements of the plan they supported was withdrawing that, so you can't ask any supplementary questions. Instead, you can ask for a written response. In a statement, Reform said the purpose of the proposed changes to the Constitution was to streamline full council meetings, to get business done, and to make council meetings more effective.
Okay.
And there's one more. This is. Oh, sorry.
No, how many is that then?
4 today.
5 on Monday.
No,
eight on Monday.
8 on Monday.
4 on Tuesday.
3 by me, 1 by you.
4, 12.
It was 5 on Wednesday.
17.
You had 1, I had 4.
Yeah.
And then Thursday,
not
yesterday was
competition, mate.
No, I'm just. But
Yeah.
seeing as you're chipping in.
Okay.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Oh, good.
No,
yeah,
sorry.
17. Thursday.
Yeah.
How many on
Thursday was
Yesterday.
4.
So 21. 25 stories.
25 stories.
All about the same party, all negative. Some hilarious, some just tragic. Go on, what's the final one?
Well, no, I feel like I've upset you now, James, on that
No,
one.
no,
really,
I'm
but
all right.
Yeah,
No,
you
it's
sure?
fine. Yeah,
I know you.
yeah.
Sorry, I
No,
just,
that's okay.
I'll think next time.
Oh, no, that's all right. Just, I mean, I'm beginning to think that we may have misnamed this because it sounds as if it's all Riley, doesn't it? It sounds as if it's entirely your
Riley's Reform Roundup.
I don't know now. Does he say something at the end?
It's from Paul in Clapham.
He says that?
Yes,
from Paul in Clapham. Thank you, Paul. But I'm beginning to think I've given you too much profile now on my show. I'm going to regret this when they replace me with you, aren't I? I'm going to look back and think Riley's Reform Roundup, that's where it began. That's where the decline, that's where the coup started. But you're all right there. What did you do? Slip? Go on, full story.
Last one. This is a peculiar one, James. So there was a
because the other 24 have been normal.
There was a town council by-election on Penarth Town Council that took place. Now you had 4 candidates. You had Labour, Plaid Cymru, the Green Party and the Conservatives. So there was no Reform candidate in this by-election. How did Reform UK win that election then? Let me tell you.
Yeah, go on.
The Conservative...
That is actually quite a good riddle. That's a good riddle, that. Yeah, it's like the kind of, if my peacock laid an egg in your garden, who would it belong to?
Yes, I've got no idea with riddles. But I'll tell you the answer to this one. The Conservative candidates defected to Reform UK a week before polling day. Now, what that meant, James, is you've got a fair few hacked-off residents that I've been in touch with because some of which had voted by post for this Conservative candidate. Now, of course, they may well have voted for the candidate, but nonetheless, he's associated with the party. This is Zach Weaver. He's the former Deputy Chief of Staff to the Welsh Conservative leader. He won by 38% of the vote, or another way of phrasing it is he only beat the Green Party by 100 votes, less than 100 votes. And the sort of question from local activists there is, well, there was no Reform candidate. If people had wanted a Reform candidate, A, they could have stood one, B, it would have been on the ballot paper. And so if the Conservative Reform vote had split, then the Green Party might have a councillor. So the Greens are annoyed, the Conservatives are annoyed because their candidate won, but he's defected to Reform the day that he won the by-election.
So the ballot papers still said Conservative?
Exactly, on polling day.
So if you were voting for the party rather than the person, you've ended up with something you didn't vote for?
Yes. He would say that he did say a week before he was joining, but nonetheless, it was on the ballot paper that he was a Conservative when he was going to be a Reform councillor.
Do we know, while you're here having great fun and hoovering up plaudits and praise galore on my show, did you do any work and find out whether or not the leader of Reform in Wales actually lives in Wales yet?
So we have... This is a tricky one because there are various questions that we're trying to get to Dan Thomas, who's the leader.
Barmouth was the popular suggestion for where he should move to, because then it goes Barnet, Bath, Barmouth.
Barnet, Bath, Barmouth.
That's nice, that.
And he was the council leader, Dan Thomas, in Barnet in North London.
Yep.
But I've not been able to sort of locate a postcode for Mr. Thomas yet.
We're still on it, though. We're still on it. So 25... Oh, Paul in Clapham's been in touch?
Has he?
Yeah, it says feeling proud and then a smiley emoji.
Please don't send any more.
Yeah, Paul, actually, Henry and I would both like to say thank you very much for that jingle, which we'll play one more time.
Riley's Reform Roundup. From Paul in Clapham.
That's the full version.
That's the full version, and probably the final time anyone's ever going to hear it. Don't you think?
Yeah.
No,
I think it's fair.
I don't know. Anyway, well done.
Thank you, James.
25 stories, and Paul in Clapham. What a time to be alive.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 12:52. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I've got a real fanboy full disclosure for you this week. I don't listen back to many of them myself. I don't think I've listened to any of them in their entirety. But I do think you can tell when I'm in full fanboy mode, can't you? And it's usually going to involve... Well, full fanboy mode is either going to involve actors that I've always admired or pop stars that I was into as a youth. Do you remember when you first discovered pop music? It was so incredible, so liberating. And this week's guest was one of the people at the very forefront for my generation of various genres of music, actually. Originally punk in the band Generation X, but subsequently a unique sound, actually. As a solo artist, but also one of the most iconic visual aesthetics, images that any pop star, any rock star has ever had. Well, there's a couple of things I love about this interview. One is that it's quite squeaky. Yeah, you heard me. It's a squeaky interview because I wish it was his trousers, because that would be even more appropriate, wouldn't it, for a rock star of this caliber. He was wearing a new-ish leather jacket, and I don't know if you'll hear it during this clip, but it was such a box fresh leather jacket that it squeaked quite a lot. And the other bit I love about it is that my Spotify has adjusted. So I stuck on a couple of his albums to prepare for the interview, and now they're coming around randomly on my Spotify, and they're just superb. You know, Hot in the City, Eyes Without a Face, White Wedding, Rebel Yell. Have you worked out who it is yet? It's only Billy Bloody Idol on Full Disclosure this week, and we cover a lot of ground. It's a slow start. Another thing that you might pick up on sometimes if you listen to a lot of them is that I'm not quite sure that he had the first idea who I was. Sometimes people are excited to come into Full Disclosure Studio because they're kind enough to be big fans of the show or fans of me, God forbid. Sometimes fairly clear. Don't really do it with people if they don't know why they're there. He knew why he was there because there's a brilliant new film about him coming out on Sky Arts, but it was a bit of a slow start. It took him a while to relax and to trust me. But once we'd broken through that barrier, it was an incredibly far-reaching and very moving interview, particularly this bit when, quite late in his father's life, he addressed a couple of things from Billy Idol's past and even made an effort for the first time to get his head around his own son's music. There's a moment when you recall a conversation with your father, and he worries that he'd upset you by not caring enough about your music.
Yeah, he didn't really understand why would anybody want to do that? It's like, that's
yeah.
So, but then over time, I think he saw I really stuck with it, and then towards the end of his life, when he started to get ill with the cancer and stuff, I think he was sort of listening to he liked this song "Save Me Now" on Kings and Queens of the Underground, and he was telling people about it and stuff, and I think he started listening to even the Generation X stuff and started to talk to me about it.
Good Lord.
And
what was that like?
Well, it was kind of wild, really, because he'd never talked to me about my music, and I said, "Dad, you're listening to Wild Youth," what? But and then when he was really ill, then he was sort of it was really towards came home to England in May of the year he was actually dying at 14, to take care of him. One night he said to me, "Did I upset you that I didn't understand about your music, Will?" And I said, "Well, Dad, I was crazy to think I could do it, because there is an element about that you had to be a little nuts to think you could do it, because it's just not normal, and there's no true qualifications for it. It's just whether you can do it or not." And so I was told him I was a little crazy to think I could do it, Dad. So why would you understand a little bit? And I knew at that moment he was seriously dying, not well at all. He didn't need any stick from me saying, "No, you didn't Because, I kind of could see why he couldn't understand,
And there's lots there, whether you're a music fan or not. There's a lot of humanity there as well. And, of course, he came perilously close to dying after having a hideous motorcycle accident. And we addressed one of his more outlandish claims, which is that he started smoking crack cocaine to help him get off the heroin. I'm not even joking. He started smoking crack cocaine to help him get off the heroin. He has lived a life, some would say the kind of life that rock stars don't seem to live anymore, but that would be, I don't know, probably a slightly clumsy comment. It is 12:58. That's it. Crikey, where's the show gone? Where's it gone? That's it. It's another week over. The only thing I've forgotten to do, I think, is to reveal what happened to the bloke who played the lead in Catch-22 when we performed it at the Edinburgh Festival in either 1990 or 1991, possibly 1992. So the guy who played Yossarian was a lovely bloke called Patrick, who was the best actor in our troupe. But we had a fancy dress party halfway through the run, and Patrick came as Freddie Mercury. And I swear to you, you have never seen anything like it. He came into the room, and I think he was wearing a spandex body stocking, and he had a fake microphone stand, and it was as if Freddie Mercury was in the room with us. And so we were all, absolutely gobsmacked. This guy was playing Yossarian, a really layered and difficult role in a really powerful play. And off stage, we were constantly saying, do your Freddie Mercury again. Do your Freddie Mercury for us. And I kid you not, Patrick is now the lead singer of Killer Queen, the most successful Queen tribute band on the planet, who routinely plays to entire arenas full of people. And it all began that night in Edinburgh, or in London when we were rehearsing to take the play to Edinburgh, when he came to a fancy dress party as Freddie Mercury. And that's the end of my Joseph Heller story. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Global Player or the LBC app. You can also stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinions. You can listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, the best bits from my LBC show every day. Do download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 4, it's Tom Sawbrick, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
I'm a bit breathless. I left it late coming down. Do you know why?
No.
I was having an indignant conversation with myself, actually, about train fares in this country.
Oh, yes.
Shall I tell you?
Yeah.
On a bit of a whim, I thought, family in Liverpool having a fancy dress party for St Patrick's. Shall I pop up Tuesday night, come back Wednesday morning, have a bit of fun?
Are you going to go as Freddie Mercury?
No, I can't say who I'm going to go as because it's somebody real, if you see what I mean.
I do.
With all due respect to Freddie.
Of course.
Looked at the train fares. This is including my Mrs. Brady O'Lady senior rail card.
Yeah.
Have a guess. Return.
To
One of the journeys off peak.
120 quid?
459.
Shut up.
459.
Just to go to Liverpool?
Don't make a face like that when you say the word Liverpool.
That's the joke.
I know it was. Isn't that extraordinary?
I can't believe it.
People don't believe me when I tell them the train prices on them.
No, I mean, if you booked it weeks ago, it would be a lot less.
Yeah, but we don't all live like that, do we?
No one lives like that.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. It'd be cheaper getting a helicopter.
If anyone has a helicopter,
you could charter a plane
and wants to fly me to the moon and back.
You can't charter a plane. They're all being used to fly people back to Dubai so that they don't use up all their days to avoid tax.
Anyway, that's my moan over.
Thank you very much, Sheila Fogarty.
Breath,
have a lovely weekend, and she's with you for the next 3 hours.
James O'Brien on LBC.